crazy as it sounds. I'll try to be as succinct as possible, but there's a lot to cover here. I don't care if anyone believes this or not. It's so absurd that I need to vent. Also, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. But I will omit any specifics that could identify me to anyone who is unfamiliar with the scenario. I'm 32 years old, and until a few months ago, I was engaged to my 5-year girlfriend. We'll call her Sarah. My younger brother Mike is 29 and has always been the golden kid in our family. To truly grasp the gravity of this betrayal and why it has hit me so hard, I need to give you some background on my family and how we arrived at this point. Growing up, Mike could do no wrong in our parents' eyes, whereas I was continually chastised and punished for minor infractions. This wasn't your average sibling rivalry or subtle favoritism, it was obvious and intense. Mike would break something and I would be accused. He'd start a fight, and I'd get grounded. If we both got straight A's, he'd get a new video game console, and I'd get a pat on the back and a reminder to keep it up. Our parents, Tom and Linda, were constantly making excuses for their actions. Mike's younger, he needs more attention, nor, you're the older one, you should know better. Nor, Mike's just more sensitive, we have to be careful with him. The relentless assault of false standards and gaslighting made me feel useless and despised in my own house. As we grew older, the preference became more evident. When I was accepted into a good college on a partial scholarship, my parents scarcely recognized it. However, when Mike opted to attend community college, they gave him a lavish celebration and purchased him a car to travel in. Never mind that I had been biking 5 miles each way to my part-time job for several years. I moved out as quickly as possible to avoid the toxic environment at home. I supported myself through college by working 2 jobs and taking out loans. Meanwhile, Mike dropped school after 1 semester, citing that college was not for him. Our parents wholeheartedly backed his decision, commending him for knowing himself and not conforming to societal expectations. They even financed his string of failed business enterprises over the following few years. Regardless of how much distance I tried to put between myself and my family, they always found a way to bring me back. Holiday dinners were a nightmare of subtle insults and not so subtle parallels. "Oh, you're still in that entry-level position? Well, Mike is considering establishing another business. He's very entrepreneurial." Never mind that I was establishing a secure profession while Mike depleted our parents' retirement money. Despite everything, I tried to keep my friendship with Mike. He was still my brother after all. However, it was always one-sided. I'd reach out and attempt to connect, but he'd either ignore me or find a way to make the conversation into a game he could win. If I was promoted, he would suddenly have a big opportunity coming up. If I started dating someone, he would inevitably be in a serious relationship. I met Sarah while trying to reunite with Mike. She was a friend of one of his short-lived girlfriends and we clicked immediately. Sarah was everything I wanted in a partner: brilliant, humorous, kind, and stunningly beautiful. We began dating, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly satisfied and valued. My folks, obviously, were not pleased. They made sarcastic remarks about Sarah being out of my league and asked what she saw in me. Mike, on the other hand, became quite interested in my life. He was always asking about Sarah, wanting to know everything about her. At the moment, I was just relieved that he seemed to care about things in my life. Looking back, I should have noticed the red flags. Sarah and I moved in together after a year of dating, and it was fantastic. We both had solid professions, traveled, and discussed the future. I began to believe that, just maybe, I could have the life I had always desired. A good profession, a loving partner, and perhaps children eventually. I proposed to Sarah on our 4th anniversary. It was nothing fancy, simply a simple supper at home and a moving speech. I was ecstatic when she said yes. We planned to have a long engagement and spend our time arranging the wedding. We weren't rushing, we had our entire lives ahead of us, or so I believed. When we told my family about our engagement, their emotions were diverse, to say the least. My mother put on a fake smile and remarked, "Oh, how nice," in a tone that implied it was anything but. My father grunted and murmured, "Good luck with that," before returning to the television. Mike, however, had the weirdest reaction. He congratulated us, but there was something strange about his smile, almost predatory. I dismissed it at the time, attributing it to my own fears. The following year was filled with wedding plans and job stress. Sarah and I were both working long hours at our jobs to save up for the wedding and a down payment on a home. We hadn't seen each other as much as we used to, but I assumed it was simply a phase. Every partnership goes through difficult times, right? Looking back, I should have seen the indications. Sarah grew distant. always on her phone, smiling at texts from people she swiftly dismissed as business friends. She began going out more with her companions, arriving home late and smelling of wine and cologne. But I fully trusted her. I never considered that she may be cheating, let alone with my own brother. Sarah began acting strangely around 4 months ago. She was moody, irritated, and always nauseous. I was excited by the possibility that she might be pregnant. We hadn't tried, but we had discussed the possibility of having children in the future. I began to plan how I would help her, thinking nursery colors and baby names. Then one night, she sat me down with tears in her eyes and delivered the bomb. She was pregnant, but it was not mine. I was stunned. We hadn't been intimate in a while due to our hectic schedules, but I never expected her to cheat on me. When I asked who the father was, she broke down and mumbled, "It's Mike." My entire universe came crashing down at that moment. Everything I thought I knew, everything I had based my existence on, came crumbling down. I could not breathe. I could not think. All I could feel was an overwhelming sense of betrayal and loss. Sarah attempted to explain, her words coming out quickly between sobbing. Apparently, it began during our engagement party. Mike had approached her and informed her that she was making a mistake by marrying me. He played on her insecurities, telling her she could do better and that he could provide her with everything I couldn't. It wasn't a one-time occurrence. They'd been having an affair for months. I kicked Sarah out that night. I couldn't bear to look at her or be in the same room with the lady who had deceived me so totally. She begged me to forgive her, explaining that it was a mistake and that she loved me. But all I could think of was how many times she had lied to my face and been with my brother while wearing the ring I had given her. After Sarah left, I contacted Mike. I can't recall what I said, it was all a swirl of wrath and pain. He initially tried to play it casual, claiming that it was merely a drunken mistake and had no meaning. But when I questioned him, he became defensive, saying, "Well, maybe if you'd been a better fiancé, she wouldn't have come to me." I saw red. I got into my car and headed to his apartment, determined to do something that would make him regret what he said. I'm not sure what I was planning to do, but when I arrived, our parents were already there. Mike apparently called them first, telling them a narrative about Sarah seducing him and how sorry he was. And you know what? They believed him. They always do. My mother immediately began lecturing me about forgiveness and family, while my father simply stood there with his arms crossed, looking disappointed in me, but not in his beloved Mike. I tried to explain what had actually happened, but they wouldn't listen. They kept telling me that I needed to forgive Mike and support Sarah throughout her pregnancy because family comes first. I lost it. Years of pent-up resentment and anger spilled forth. I told them exactly how I felt about their twisted sense of devotion, how they'd always favored Mike over me, and how they'd never taken my side or backed me. I told Mike that he was no longer my brother and that he had died. I told my parents they could have the son they'd always wanted because they didn't have me. I stormed off, ignoring their cries and pleads. I drove for hours with no destination in mind, only a want to be away from everything and everyone. When I eventually got home, I discovered dozens of missed calls and messages. Sarah begged for another opportunity, as Mike alternated between apologies and accusations. The majority, however, came from my parents, who demanded that I grow up and make amends. I ignored them all, rarely eating and sleeping. I called out of work, depleting all of my vacation days. I couldn't face anyone and couldn't handle the prospect of explaining what had happened. I just sat in my apartment, revisiting every detail of my relationship with Sarah and every interaction with Mike, trying to figure out where I went wrong. It has been 3 months now. I've relocated to a new apartment, changed my phone number and begun treatment to deal with all of this. But my family will not give up. Despite my efforts to cut off communication, they continue to intrude in my life. They've begun showing up at my office, attempting to ambush me and push a reconciliation. My mother confronts me in the parking lot, wailing about how I'm ripping the family apart. My father left harsh voicemails telling me to man up and forgive Mike. Mike himself has attempted to approach me several times, but I've managed to dodge him thus far. They've even dispatched flying monkeys disguised as extended family members to guilt-trip me into forgiving Mike. Aunts, uncles, and cousins I haven't spoken to in years are suddenly calling, telling me how important family is and how I should let bygones be bygones. It's as if they're in another reality where Mike and Sarah made a little mistake rather than a life-altering one. I received a message from Sarah yesterday. She is keeping the baby and intends to co-parent with Mike. And guess what? My parents are overjoyed to become grandparents, forgetting the circumstances and the harsh remarks they used to make when Sarah was with me. The letter was full of apologies and explanations, including how she and Mike discovered real love via this terrible scenario. She even had the nerve to suggest that she hoped we could all become friends eventually for the sake of the child. I am at my wit's end. Part of me wishes to sever ties altogether and start over somewhere else, perhaps moving to another state, changing my identity and creating a new life where no one knows about this mess. But another part of me is so outraged that I want to stay and fight, to show them how twisted up the situation is. I don't know what to do now. The treachery has had an impact on all aspects of my life. I cannot take being alone with my thoughts. I haven't even considered dating again. The idea of trusting someone like that scares me. I've also lost friends over this. Those who believe I should take the high road and reunite with my family. As if I'm terrible for refusing to play happy families with the people who have wounded me the most. The idea of Sarah and Mike raising a kid together, a child who should have been mine, is like a continual stab in my gut. I understand cognitively that the child is innocent in all of this. It is not the baby's fault that its parents are lying, cheating scumbags, but I can't bring myself to feel good about its existence. My parents have begun to discuss how I should be involved in the child's life and how I will become an uncle. The concept makes me feel physically ill. How can I look at this youngster and not recognize the ultimate emblem of my brother's betrayal? So, Reddit, I guess my question is: am I the idiot for refusing to forgive my brother and ex-fiancé? Am I wrong to want to lose relations with my family over this? Any help on how to proceed would be greatly appreciated, as I now feel like I'm drowning in a sea of treachery and gaslighting. I apologize for the lengthy post. If you made it this far, I appreciate it. Writing all of this down has been cathartic in a way. I'm not sure what I hope to gain from sharing this: validation, guidance, or simply the opportunity to scream into the void and have someone, anybody, hear me. Edit. Holy God, this exploded up overnight. Thank you all for your help and advice. I'm astonished by the response, and it will take me some time to look through all of the comments. However, I wanted to answer a few typical questions. 1. Yes, I have consulted with a lawyer about getting a restraining order against my family. It is currently in progress. 2. I don't intend to have any contact with the baby. It's not the child's fault, but I can't become involved without losing my sanity. 3. For those who have inquired about my job, I have already spoken with HR about the situation. They are aware and supportive. They have strengthened security at the front desk and offered me the option to work from home more frequently. I am grateful for their understanding. 4. Many of you have inquired whether I had contemplated relocating to another city or state. It is definitely something I am thinking about. My company has offices in several other cities, so a transfer may be possible. I'm considering the advantages and cons. 5. To those suggesting a DNA test. Sarah acknowledged the affair, and the timeline is consistent. I see no reason to suspect the child is not Mike's. Even if it was mine, I doubt I could ever look at that child without thinking about this. 6. I've been overwhelmed by the number of people who have had similar experiences. It's upsetting to realize how widespread this type of betrayal is, but it's also strangely comforting to know that I'm not alone. Thank you all for being vulnerable and sharing. 7. To the individual who inquired if I had considered taking legal action against Mike for alienation of affection, I looked into it, but it is not recognized in my state. Even if it were, I don't think I have the energy for a legal battle right now. 8. Several people have noted that Mike's behavior appears narcissistic. I've started reading about narcissistic personality disorder, and much of it rings true. It helps me comprehend, but does not excuse, some of his acts. 9. Those who have inquired about Sarah's family are as startled and appalled as one could anticipate. They have cut off communication with her and have reached out to offer me their support. It's a minor comfort, but I value it. 10. To the individual who asked if I'd considered having my own children someday. Honestly, this entire experience has made me wonder whether I want to have a family at all. But I'm trying not to make any major decisions while I analyze everything. I'll keep you updated if anything big happens, but for the time being my focus is on recovering and moving ahead. Thank you again, Reddit. You have helped more than you realize. Your encouragement and suggestions have given me a lot to think about, and they have truly been a lifeline during this tough time. I may not be able to answer every remark, but please know that I read them all and they are making me feel less alone in this. Update. Hello Reddit. It's been approximately 2 weeks since my previous post, and it has been a full roller coaster. First, thank you all for your enormous support and suggestions. I never anticipated my post to go so viral, and going through all of your responses has been both upsetting and oddly reassuring. It's disturbing how regular this type of deception is. The last several weeks have been tough, to say the least. Remember how I said I was working on obtaining a restraining order? That evolved into a huge ordeal. My lawyer filed the paperwork and we had a hearing arranged. I assumed it would be simple, given the proof and the ongoing harassment, but I was mistaken. My parents arrived at the court with their own lawyer, some fancy guy in an expensive suit who likely charges more per hour than I do in a week. They attempted to portray me as the crazy one, claiming I was ripping the family apart over a simple misunderstanding, as if Mike had stumbled and fallen into my fiancé. Fortunately, the judge didn't buy it. She issued the restraining order against Mike and my parents, but only after my mother fell into tears in court and my father glared at me as if I had committed murder. The look on Mike's face, however, I swear if looks could kill, I would be dead. As we were leaving the courthouse, Mike attempted to approach me. My lawyer stepped in between us, reminding him of the newly issued restraining order. Mike merely scoffed and said this wasn't over, and I couldn't hide behind a piece of paper forever. I'd be lying if I claimed his words didn't shake me. But at the very least, I have some legal protection. The job situation has been another nightmare. Remember when I mentioned that my family had been showing up at my workplace? This came to a head last week. I was in a meeting with a customer when my assistant alerted me that my mother was in the lobby and raising a disturbance. Apparently, she had brought a photo album and was attempting to show my coworkers baby images of Mike and me while lamenting about how close her boys used to be. I excused myself from the meeting and went down to the lobby, where I discovered my mother surrounded by a number of uncomfortable-looking coworkers. She was in the middle of relating a story about how Mike and I used to bathe together as toddlers. When she noticed me, she attempted to rush towards me, talking about a baby shower, but I interrupted her. I told her she had to go right away or I would call the police and have her removed for trespassing and breaking the restraining order. Her expression was as if I had slapped her, but after everything they had put me through, I couldn't bring myself to care. Security let her out, and I had to spend the next hour performing damage control with my employer and coworkers. Fortunately, most of them understood, but I could tell some were wondering what kind of drama I was bringing into the office. But it was the fight with Mike that really threw everything off track. Last Saturday, I was in the gym, trying to let out some of my frustration on the punching bag. I was so into my training that I didn't notice someone approaching me until I heard his voice. I swung around and there was Mike, smirking at me as if he hadn't just broken the restraining order. He began speaking loudly enough for anyone surrounding to hear. I ordered him to go before I contacted the cops, but he laughed and said he'd tell them how I had threatened him and Sarah. That was when I lost it. I swiped at him, my first landing on his jaw. He stumbled backward before lunging at me. We ended up on the floor, trading blows like kids again. Except this time there were no parents to separate us, no one instructing me to be the larger person and let Mike win. I got in a few nice hits before the gym staff separated us. Mike's nose was bleeding, and I could feel my own swelling shut. We were both shrieking, trying to get free and get back at each other. The gym manager threatened to call the cops, which ultimately shook me out of it. I grabbed my belongings and fled. I was driving home, still shaking from adrenaline, when I received a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I responded. Sarah was shouting at me about how I had broken Mike's nose and that he could require surgery. I couldn't help laughing. The ridiculousness of her being upset with me after what they'd done was simply too much. I apologize if I had upset her little boyfriend, whom she had been sleeping with behind my back for several months. She began sobbing, complaining about how anxious she was, how the baby could detect her pain, and how I could be so selfish. I hung up and blocked her phone. The aftermath from the brawl was severe. The news had spread like wildfire throughout our social circle. My phone was flooded with texts from friends and family members, some supporting me, others calling me out for assaulting my poor defenseless brother. Sarah's parents contacted me again, expressing their support for me and their displeasure in their daughter. It was a minor consolation, but at this point, I'll take what I can. The restraining order does not seem adequate anymore. Mike has demonstrated his willingness to violate it, and I'm concerned about what he'll do next. The legal fallout has been a nightmare. My lawyer called me the day after the gym incident. Mike apparently filed assault accusations against me. I recounted what had happened, how Mike had violated the restraining order and provoked me. My lawyer groaned and said we'd fight it, but it might be a tough struggle considering that I threw the first punch. We are in the process of bringing our own charges against Mike for breaking the restraining order. My lawyer is convinced that this will benefit our case, but nothing is guaranteed. I've had to provide police statements, show them injuries on my face and knuckles, and justify defending myself against my own brother, which is humiliating. Mike and I have been banned from the gym for life. I can't blame them, but it's unfortunate that the gym was one of the few places where I felt like I could let out some of my frustration in a healthy manner. My cousin Amy, whom I've always been close to, called me the other day. She's taken a lot of pressure from her family for supporting me, but she's staying firm. She told me about what had been going on behind the scenes. Apparently my parents have been telling everyone that I'm experiencing a mental breakdown. They claim that Sarah and Mike's relationship began after Sarah and I split up, and that I am simply envious and unable to let go. According to Amy, most of the family is skeptical, but some are. It's irritating to know that they're spreading false information about me while I'm attempting to recuperate. Things at work have been, to say the least, difficult. After the incident with my mother in the lobby and the argument with Mike, which went viral on local social media, I can sense my coworkers are on edge around me. My manager called me into his office earlier this week. He began by stating he valued me as an employee and realizes I'm going through a difficult period, but then he dropped the bombshell. He believes it would be best if I took a leave of absence until things calm down. He suggested we call it a personal sabbatical. Paid, of course. I wanted to fight, to tell him that work is the only thing keeping me sane right now, but I knew the choice had already been made. So I agreed, thanked him for his understanding and began to pack up my office. As I was leaving, I overheard two of my co-workers discussing how my brother got my fiancée pregnant. I slammed my office door louder than required as I exited, taking some little satisfaction in watching them jump. I'd be lying if I said none of this was impacting me. I've started taking long drives at night to get out of my flat. Sometimes I find myself parked outside my former place, the one I lived with Sarah, wondering how my life got so messed up. In the midst of this commotion, I received support from an unexpected source. Sarah's younger sister, Emma. Emma contacted me on social media, apologizing for her sister's conduct and giving her support. At first, I was skeptical. What if this was a trick? But after speaking with her, I realized she is equally disgusted by Sarah's behavior as I am. She's been telling me about what's going on in Sarah and Mike's lives. They appear to have moved in together, living as if they hadn't just destroyed numerous lives to be together. Emma claims Sarah has been attempting to portray herself as the victim, crying to anybody who would listen about how she never intended to hurt anyone and how she and Mike are soulmates who found each other against all odds. It makes me sick to my stomach, but I appreciate Emma keeping me in the loop. After all, information is power, even if it is knowledge that I would prefer not to have. The social media environment has been a nightmare. I've always been a rather private person, but this event has thrown me into the unwanted spotlight. Someone, probably one of Mike's friends, posted about our gym feud on a local Facebook page. The post did not mention our names, but it described the incident in enough detail for anyone who knows us to figure it out. The comment area became a battleground. Some individuals defended me, claiming Mike received what he deserved. Others described me as unstable and said I needed to be locked up. I made the mistake of looking over some of the comments one night after having too many beers. A huge mistake. I ended up hurling my phone across the room so hard that the screen cracked. Since then, I've canceled most of my social media profiles. I can't deal with the continuous notifications and messages from folks I haven't spoken to in years who suddenly want to know all the juicy details about my personal life. With everything that has happened, I have realized that I cannot stay in this city any longer. There are too many memories and chances to run into Sarah, Mike, or my parents. I've started looking for internal moves, and there's a promising opportunity in our Seattle office. It's not ideal. I've never been a fan of continual rain, but at this point, I'd move to the moon to avoid all of this turmoil. I haven't made any final decisions yet, but the concept of a fresh start is becoming increasingly intriguing. New city, new apartment, new life, where no one recognizes me as the guy whose brother cheated on his fiancée. My folks have been unusually silent since the restraining order was granted. I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, for them to figure out a new method to force their way back into my life. Sarah has been spreading the word about her pregnancy far and wide. Emma tells me she's been posting continuous updates on social media, ultrasound photographs, belly shots and so on, with a message about how blessed she and Mike are and how thrilled they are to start their family. Each new piece of information feels like a fresh wound, triggering the pain just as I thought I was beginning to recover. So that is where things stand right now. 2 weeks ago, I believed my life couldn't possibly get any worse, yet it has. I'm still angry and wounded, but also weary. I am tired of justifying myself. So Reddit, I suppose this is less of an update and more of, I'm not sure, a cry into the void. I'm not sure what I'm asking for right now. Advice, pity, or a time machine that allows me to never introduce Sarah to my brother? Whatever happens next, I will attempt to keep you all informed. Your encouragement has meant more to me than you can realize. It's nice to be reminded that there are still good individuals in the world, even when it feels like everything is full of betrayal and deceit. Final update. Hello Reddit. It's been a week since my previous update, and I'm here with what I expect to be my final post on this whole disaster. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone for their help and guidance throughout this journey. Your writings have been a lifeline in the worst times of my life. So where to start? A lot has happened in just 7 days, and I'm still trying to digest everything. I guess I'll start with the major news. I'm relocating. Yes, I took the risk and accepted a transfer to our Seattle office. It was not an easy decision, but after everything that had happened, I felt I needed a new start. The choice came following an especially difficult day last week. I'd just returned from another meeting with my lawyer regarding Mike's assault allegations when I saw a note in my mailbox. It came from Sarah. I almost tossed it out before opening it, but curiosity got the best of me. Inside, there was an ultrasound image and a handwritten letter stating how pleased she and Mike were about their baby. She went on to say that she hoped I could find it in my heart to be pleased for them, and that the baby would be delighted to have its uncle in its life. I saw red. Before I realized it, I'd grabbed my phone, unblocked Sarah, and dialed her number. She picked up on the second ring and I simply let go. I informed her exactly how I felt about her, Mike, and their beautiful little family. I told her she was insane if she believed I'd ever want to do anything with that kid, and that she, Mike, and the baby could all go to hell. It wasn't my best moment, but I felt like I finally shouted everything I'd been keeping back. That's when I realized I couldn't stay in this city anymore. That same night, I called my supervisor and informed him that I wanted to transfer to Seattle. He was relieved, to be honest. I believe he was concerned about how all of this drama would affect the company. He promised to expedite the papers, and by the next morning it was official. I had 2 weeks to collect my belongings and relocate across the nation. My family and social circle were quick to learn about my move. My folks, unsurprisingly, were outraged. They turned up at my place unexpectedly, again breaking the restraining order, to try to talk me out of it. My mother was crying, accusing me of abandoning the family, and my father was furious, yelling at me for being selfish and immature. I didn't participate. I simply phoned the police and had them removed for breaking the restraining order. As they were let out, my mother yelled at me that I would regret it, that family was everything and that I was wasting it. I immediately closed the door and returned to packing. Mike reacted differently. He didn't try to contact me directly, most likely due to the current legal difficulties, but he did write a lengthy message on social media about how some people can't handle seeing others happy, and how he and Sarah were rising above the hate to focus on their new family. It was definitely intended for me, as he attempted to portray himself as the victim. I'll confess it stung to see how many people liked and commented in his favor, but I reminded myself that their opinion is meaningless because they don't know the truth. Sarah's response was the most startling. After our phone talk, she contacted her sister, Emma, who had been keeping me updated on Sarah and Mike's situation, as you may recall. Apparently, my statements had a greater impact than I had imagined. Emma informed me that Sarah had broken down, stating that she realized what she and Mike had done was terrible and was scared of the future. My cousin Amy, bless her, offered to help me pack. She even informed me more about what's going on with the family. Amy told me that my aunt, my mother's sister, had a heated argument with my mother, accusing her of always favoring Mike and pushing me away. My aunt complained that my parents were reaping the consequences of their years of favoritism. I can't say I'm not relieved to hear that someone is finally calling them out for their behavior. My lawyer assures me that my move will have no effect on the legal case, which is currently pending. We're still pursuing charges against Mike for breaching the restraining order and defending the assault accusations he brought against me. My lawyer seems certain that the judge will see through Mike's arguments, particularly considering his history of breaching the restraining order. The fact that I'm going across the nation should also show that I'm not a threat to Mike, which may help get his charges dropped. I don't know if I'll post any further updates after this. Part of starting over is putting the past behind, and as helpful as this group has been, I believe it is time for me to move on from revisiting this narrative. I need to focus on creating my new life rather than obsessing on the past. So I believe this is my final update. Wish me luck, Reddit. I've got a whole new life ahead of me in Seattle, and I intend to make the most of it. Thank you so much for staying till the end. If you enjoy our videos, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Have a good day. I caught my wife cheating with her old fling on a hike. It turns out she and her friends had been using him as a surrogate joystick. I, Ali, 38, am currently on a camping hiking trip with my wife Liv, 36 and 3 other married couples, Dom and Kate, Sean and Sarah, Bill and Miranda, as well as Liv's longtime friend Ian, 38 and his boyfriend OD, whose real name is Orlando, and no, he was not named after the dog from Garfield. We're all in our mid-30s to early 40s and enjoy spending time outside. We've been wanting to go on this hike for a while. We camp at night and walk throughout the daytime. Everything was great until early evening on the 3rd day of our 8-day journey. We stopped to camp and my wife and I decided to explore the surroundings. We discovered a little waterfall feeding into a creek that followed the trail we had been trekking. It was roughly 5 feet tall and flowed largely onto rocky rocks below. My wife stated that she wanted to rinse off in the stream and waterfall but did not want to soak her clothes. I urged her to go for it because we weren't far from the others and the location was secluded enough. I responded, "If you make it quick you could be in and out in no time." She did exactly that, lingered for a moment before stepping out and air drying with a tiny towel. Ian arrived unexpectedly from behind some trees after she had quickly put her shorts and panties back on. My wife was still topless. Here's where everything got weird. Neither of them responded. She proceeded to dress casually, and Ian approached as if he had seen her naked 100 times before. He told us that Dom wanted us to know something, but I can't remember what. My wife and Ian exchanged small talk before we all headed back to camp. It is now day 5. The hiking track leads to a small town, where we want to spend the night at a local inn to rest, resupply supplies and recover. For the past 2 days, I've been thinking about what happened at the waterfall. I tried to keep my thoughts hidden, but my wife questioned me this morning why I was so quiet yesterday. I told her I was weary, but in reality, I can't stop thinking about something that happened between her and Ian previously. I would normally be less skeptical, but I know Ian is not gay. I've known him for around 8 years and consider him a friend. We husbands and OD are the outliers in this group, as the 4 wives and Ian have been buddies since college. I've asked my wife before if she's ever dated Ian, and she's always responded no. I also inquired if Ian and any of the other ladies in the group had ever been in a relationship, and she denied that too. I might be delusional, but their relationship felt too similar, especially since she was still topless. My wife is usually very conservative about her body, so her lack of reaction to Ian's presence struck me as odd. I have no tangible reason to believe anything is wrong, but I can't shake the sensation that there's more to their history than friendship. Am I being paranoid, or is this a red flag? I am really trying not to leap to conclusions. Update 1. It's early morning on day 6 and I wanted to give you all an update. I told my wife Liv about what happened at the waterfall. I wanted to talk to her while we still had some privacy before heading back out on the trail, and I'm glad I did. I started as non-confrontational as possible, simply remarking that it seemed strange that she wasn't concerned by Ian's presence despite the fact that she was topless. If she had responded in any other way, I would have dropped it, but she became really defensive immediately. Is this why you've been moody? It's not a huge deal. Everyone has seen breasts before, including Ian. You have to grow up. This truly alarmed me. She rarely reacts forcefully until she feels bad about something. I probed harder and she grew more reactionary and defensive, attempting to deflect and belittle every question I posed, with a dash of gaslighting thrown in. I finally had enough and told her, either tell me what's going on or I'm going to confront Ian, who you know won't lie. This is when Liv revealed that she and Ian had a previous sexual relationship. I became enraged and demanded to know why she lied to me after I had previously asked her about it. She claimed she did not lie. They never dated. It was simply an FWB, friends with benefits situation before we became formal. I asked her, startled and agitated, so you were sleeping with him when we first started dating? She retorted, you don't have to be so vulgar. I don't want to discuss this right now. Can't we have this conversation when the trip is over? I said, absolutely not. Either you tell me everything now, or I'll start interrogating your pals. I believe she saw how serious I was and decided to reveal the whole truth. The first part I already knew. She had a string of bad relationships and dating encounters. Liv ascribed a large portion of this to not getting to know the other person before leaping into bed with them. When we started dating, she asked if we could take it slow. I accepted since I was also seeking for something unique and I was extremely intrigued in Liv. She said I could date others until we chose to be official, but I told her I didn't want to date around and preferred to focus on one relationship at a time. She stated it made her really happy. Then she divulged something that would shock everyone if it became public. Liv, Kate, Miranda, and Sarah all had comparable FWB situations with Ian while dating their current husbands. Kate, who is now married to Dom, became fed up with dating the wrong guys shortly after graduation. During this time, she and Ian became FWB. When she met Dom, she urged that they take it slow and get to know each other before becoming intimate. Kate stated it was simple because she was still sleeping with Ian, meeting her sexual needs while focusing on the emotional part with Dom. Ian was happy with the arrangement, assuring her that it was all about finding her special someone. They would talk about Dom and sleep together, and when Kate realized she had found the one, they ended the FWB arrangement and she began her sexual relationship with Dom. They eventually got married. Kate later informed the other women about their agreement. Throughout the years, they each used Ian as a surrogate while looking for the one. I'm only the most current individual involved in this circumstance. I asked Liv to explain her role. The other women's marriages are their own business, but I was curious how this worked out for her. She informed me that after her former lover had too many narcissistic characteristics, she had had enough and wanted to meet a good guy, which I suppose was me. She asked Ian to help her in the same manner he had helped the other three. Ian agreed, explaining that the whole affair was about finding her a life partner. I feel he was sincere in everything. He's a free-spirited type of person. I've had serious chats with Ian, and he's the type of person that will help anyone with anything. We play golf together and he has been in my life since I began dating Liv. I didn't realize he was so involved. Essentially, he would listen, offer counsel, and talk through her emotions so she could wait until she felt comfortable with me. I felt like throwing up. It feels like the entire relationship was a lie. Despite this, I continued to seek answers. I asked when she quit seeing Ian. She claimed it was when we became official. I told her that I thought we were formal when we agreed to date, so I asked her when she considered us official. She explained, dating does not constitute two people as a couple. When you asked me to commit and we had our first intercourse, we were official. She stated that she and Ian had been strictly platonic since that night. I mentioned, that was 7 months into dating. So you've been sleeping with him for 7 months? She became silent and I knew the answer. I said, let me be clear, I would pick you up for a date and we would go out and have a great time, holding hands, cuddling, kissing and making out. Then I'd drop you off and you'd meet Ian, sleep with him and brag about what a terrific person I am? She retorted, don't make it sound so dirty. I was appalled. I wanted to run but we were in the middle of nowhere and there was no way out except to keep walking forward. In retrospect, I wish I had just left, but instead I probed for more information. I inquired, when you say you slept together, do you mean you used him just to get yourself off, or do you mean you did all the positions, foreplay and kinky things that we do? She became very silent again. I gently stated, you must answer my questions. I need to know, and I will find out, whether it is from you or one of them. With that, I motioned towards the other rooms. She answered slowly, all of it, maybe even more than with you. The room began spinning, but I asked the dreaded question, when? When was the last time? She said, the night before our first time together. I'd never wanted to leave someone more than I did at that moment, yet all I could do was sit there in shock. She attempted to console me, but I ordered her to stay away. I needed time. With nowhere else to go, I gathered some blankets and pillows and slept on the floor at the foot of the bed. I passed out for a few hours, but I'm now up and making this update. I want to march out of here, but there's a 12-passenger van at the end of the route that I don't have the keys for. I'll have to stay with these people for another 2.5 days, with another half-day travel back. I do not know what to do. Part of me can understand the reasoning, but largely I'm heartbroken and believe our entire relationship was a scam. I feel like a silver medalist, not a champion. I also have an intense need to share everything with everyone, because all of these other guys are in the same circumstance. We are all here on false pretenses. I do not know what to do. I have about 1 hour till everyone gets up and then I'll have to face Ian and my wife. Am I overreacting? Is this marriage worth saving? I do not see how we can go back. Update 2. I'm back in the comfort of my own house. Unfortunately, I and several others may be facing divorce. I was able to keep it together for the majority of day 6, but I'm sure everyone could tell something was up with me. I remained quiet and pushed myself to get back to the van. I guess Liv grabbed Ian aside about lunchtime and told him what I knew. After that, Ian began attempting to buddy up with me and converse, despite my request that he leave me alone. He persisted a couple more times before I snapped and told him to stop it in a very strong manner. Liv intervened, and they both took the hint. I needed more time to process. The next 24 hours went relatively smoothly. Everyone just kind of left me alone. However, after snapping at Ian, his temperament altered dramatically. He shifted from his customary laid-back demeanor to becoming slightly distant with everyone. He would occasionally make subtle passive-aggressive remarks, nothing too explicit, but clearly intended at me. By the 7th night, we had set up camp, and I had relaxed a little, being more friendly with everyone. We were sitting around the campfire, finishing up the last of our meals. People were conversing, joking and sharing stories. Billy told a long embarrassing story from high school. It was a very humorous story about him and his first girlfriend, and he acted like an idiot. When he was done, he said something like, "I still can't believe I was ever that dumb. I still cringe just thinking about it." Ian responded, "Well, at least you grew up. Some people never grow up and overcome their past." He then stared at me with the most disdainful expression. In that time, I experienced an out-of-body experience and saw only crimson. The filter was gone and logic was out the window. It was on. "You know, Ian, you are right. Sometimes we just have to face the past head on." Liv attempted to interrupt, but I disregarded her totally. "How about we address the fact that you used to have **** all our wives while we were dating?" When I stated it, even the insects were quiet. "Oh fellas, didn't you know either?" "Yeah, while they were holding out on us to make a connection," I air quoted, "our future spouses were using Ian here as their human dildo." Dom and Billy seemed perplexed and angry. Sean had a look on his face like he'd just walked in on his grandmother fapping, complete train disaster astonishment. But I wasn't finished. I turned to Dom. It was Kate who devised this incredible strategy. She realized that the secret to developing a long-term relationship was to take things slowly and get to know each other before getting into bed. All you need to deal with the impulses is a best friend who will blow your back out when you get home from your dates all hot and bothered. Dom jumped in at this time. F*****Ku Ali. How do you know this?" "Oh, I just found out 2 days ago that when I took Liv out for drinks, that wasn't going to be the only thing she was swallowing that night." At this time, Liv lost control and began yelling at me. "Why the F*** are you doing this? You don't have to." However, she was cut short when Sean stood up. "It is true. It is entirely true." Everyone fell silent and glanced at him. "I have known since we were dating. I didn't realize it was also true for everyone else until after we got married. I apologize, Billy. I swear I didn't realize it was you too back then." Billy's expression was one of dread. "Sean, we used to have double dates with Miranda and Sarah. We went out several times and then dropped them off at Ian's. Does that imply they—" Sean simply stared at him and nodded. I quickly turned to Ian. "Two at once, you hound dog." Then in a fit of bravery, I howled like a wolf. Which in retrospect is pretty terrible, but at the time, I thought it was funny. Arguments broke out among the couples all around us, but an audible gasp and whimper caught everyone's attention. OD sat there, tears spilling down his face. He looked at Ian and said, "Lies. More lies. It never ends. You always do this to me, no matter how much I forgive or how many times I return your affection." He then slapped Ian and bolted down the trail. Ian ran after him. The other 3 couples mumbled under their breath at each other, then began walking away in different directions. I stood beside the fire, feeling triumphant. Liv approached me and said, "I hope you're happy." I looked her in the eyes and replied, "I've never been more ****ing happy with myself in my whole life. I'm currently 80/20ths on obtaining a divorce." I suggested we postpone any major debates until we were home, unpacked, showered and nourished, because the only thing she would achieve before then is push me to my limits. At that instant, she turned and entered our tent. The following day was the most embarrassing 7 hours of my life. Between the morning pack-up, the hike to the van, loading up and the 4.5-hour journey home, only around 19 words were spoken. Now I'm sitting in my bathroom, newly showered. I'm going to eat some chicken nuggets, drink 3 Dr. Peppers and then converse with my wife. I'm not sure where we're headed from here, or where anyone else will wind up, but I know it won't be pretty regardless. Update 3. It's been 4 weeks since we returned from our trip and everything seems to have crumbled. Dom and Kate are getting divorced. They have been together the longest of the couples and have a 10-year-old son. Dom took the revelation quite hard. In addition to being together the longest, they also had the longest courtship period, 9 months. It's been a difficult pill for him to chew because he remembers they didn't truly got intimate until he began to wonder if he wanted to stay in the relationship. Now that he knows the truth, no matter what Kate says, he will always believe the delay was due to her desire to continue being with Ian. I sat down with Sean and had a couple beers one night. Despite the fact that we just met through our wives, we've been very close friends over the years. Sean stated that Sarah was straightforward with him when they began dating. She informed him she intended to wait at least 3 months before having sex, but that she would still meet with her FWB. Sean liked her but told her he was simply casually dating until he knew for sure, which Sarah was fine with. So, unlike the rest of us, Sean had a clear decision. Sean discovered he was falling for Sarah 2 weeks before the 3-month period ended, following a few double dates with Billy and Miranda. He informed her he wanted to be exclusive. She broke the 3-month limit and they became intimate that night and haven't looked back. Both were completely honest about their adventures at this time, and it appears that their candor paid off handsomely. Sean informed me they had a brief dispute after the campfire incident because Sarah felt they should have excused themselves rather than getting involved, but they are doing well as a couple overall. I've also got an update on Billy and Miranda. They are in the initial stages of reconciliation. Billy is clearly and understandably struggling. He believes she cheated and uses words to excuse it. They dated for 6 months before getting married, and they have 3 children under the age of 7, so they both believe they must try to make it work for the kids. Billy's toughest challenge is recalling dropping both Miranda and Sarah at Ian's on 2 consecutive occasions, knowing she had a threesome arranged. It reduced him to a shell of his former self. Miranda appears to have attempted to explain that they only did something on one of those nights, and it was more akin to a reverse train than a full threesome. Once again, semantics are used as an excuse. Sean assures me Miranda is speaking the truth, because Sarah was the second party and acknowledged it wasn't a true 3-way. But honestly, does it matter? Ian reached out to apologize. I told him to F*** himself, then blocked him. OD also reached out. I guess my revelation was the final straw for him. We have actually talked quite a bit over the last few weeks. We actually talked a lot over the course of a week, despite the fact that we had previously merely been cordial acquaintances. It turns out that Ian and OD had been on and off for 15 years. Ian presents a laid-back, selfless appearance to everyone else, but OD knows him to be incredibly self-centered and manipulative. Ian frequently breaks up with OD for brief periods of time or claims they are on a break so he can do whatever he wants without being labeled a cheater, only to return once he has had his pleasure. Looking back, OD sees that at least 2 of these breaks occurred during these dating situations. However, OD is the most upset since he has tolerated it for so long and has given Ian numerous opportunities. He says this was the final straw. He's returning to Santa Barbara and leaving Ian and the cold, nasty Midwest behind for good. Despite our exhaustion after the hike, Liv and I had the longest chat. I informed her right away that I was not interested in arguing, disputing, or anything like that. I said, "Tell me everything you want to tell me. I will not interrupt or ask questions until you finish. Then I demand the exact same courtesy." She agreed. Her letter was filled with apologies and explanations. She would admit it was wrong, then explain why it was okay or point to a positive conclusion. She expressed her disappointment and hurt with how I behaved at the campsite, but she also realized that Ian deserved equal culpability for poking the bear. When she finished, she asked if I had any questions. I replied, "No." And then I began. I informed her that our entire relationship is based on false pretenses. I can see where you were coming from and why you tried the entire FWB thing. Your 3 best friends did it and scored excellent husbands before you. But on some level, all 4 of you had to understand that starting a relationship like this was wrong. It was tremendously distressing to learn that you were sleeping with someone else while we were getting to know each other, and I believe it impeded the natural progression of our relationship. I added, it has significantly altered my memory of our early days together. Do you remember that fantastic day we had approximately 4 or 4.5 months into our relationship? We spent the day together. It finished with us back on my couch, kissing, your shirt off, and me caressing you over your shorts. It was getting quite hot. You paused and apologized, stating you wanted to but weren't quite ready. You needed to be absolutely certain. I assured you that everything would be fine, and you gazed at me affectionately, kissed me passionately, and then departed. I stopped before saying, I can only guess you left my place and went to Ian's. As she nodded, tears streamed down her face. I said, I invested that energy in you. You chose to give it to someone else rather than returning it to me. I might have been able to get over this if it had ended in the first or second month, when we were more relaxed. But after that, we spent a lot of time together and you maintained your relationship with him until the day before we became official. You enjoyed having us both. You did whatever mental gymnastics were required to justify it to yourself. I told her, you may not realize it, but this last portion is the toughest part of it all for me. Learning that you were far more adventurous and exciting with him is like a dagger to the heart. It makes me feel like I'm second best, like I'm the retirement plan you choose, just good enough. She interjected saying, no, not like that, I love you. He was only having sex, it was not real. That's how it is when they don't matter. It's simpler to be free and wild then. And so on. I waited for her to finish before saying, remember, we agreed it was my turn to talk. Afterward I remarked, I see your point of view, but it is not mine. As your husband, I believe it is my responsibility to give you my full energy, emotional, physical, cerebral, and sensual. I believe I have accomplished this during the past 8 years. I believe you have given me your best in some areas, but I now see I have not received your best in others. And as a male, I have to acknowledge that sensuous energy is really essential to me. The fact that you did not trust me with all of your sensual energy was the determining factor. I do not think I can recover from this, and I want to file for divorce. The scene became chaotic from there. She started crying hard, asking, giving herself and pleading with me to start over. I eventually removed myself from the situation. Later, she mentioned that we were just in an emotional state right now and that I needed to give it some time. This gave me pause, and I agreed to her terms of 3 weeks. As I previously stated, it has been 4 years, and my feelings have been consistent. We met with a joint divorce lawyer, who will represent both of us. There are no children involved and we both want to sell the house, so the initial meeting went smoothly. She has been tremendously depressed, as have I, but this is for the best. Sometimes things simply don't work out. Thank you very much. Adoptive parents kicked me out at 17 for getting pregnant and refusing to keep my baby. 20 years later, their biological son reached out to me. When I was 17, my adoptive parents kicked me out and disowned me because I got pregnant and refused to give them my baby. 2 decades later, their biological son found me on Facebook and reached out. I was just 4 years old when I lost my parents in a tragic car accident. I don't remember much about the crash itself, just that one moment I was in the back seat and the next time I opened my eyes, I was in a hospital. Waking up to a world of nurses and doctors was terrifying for me as a child. I remember a CPS worker sitting beside me, explaining that my parents had died and I would need to stay with another family for a while. It was also confusing and overwhelming. After that, I went through a series of foster homes, none of which ever felt like home. When I was 5, I was finally placed with Lorraine and James, who had been eager to have a child of their own. From the start I felt their warmth and genuine care. They welcomed me into their home without hesitation, filling the emptiness I had felt from losing my own family. It seemed like, after all the tragedy, I had finally found a second family. However, as soon as I moved in, I noticed that James was very strict and disciplined, while Lorraine seemed to always follow his lead. I later learned that James's strictness was due to his background as an Army veteran who had been injured in action. His military experiences explained his obsession with meticulous planning and order. Understanding this didn't make it any easier when he would get angry over small things, like being a minute late for church. His strictness often left me feeling anxious and like I had to walk on eggshells around him. Lorraine, on the other hand, was more laid back but also drank a lot when James wasn't around. I watched her finish entire bottles of wine by herself, and she always seemed lost in her thoughts. She rarely asked about my school or homework, and aside from drinking, her main activities were cooking and cleaning because James was very particular about that. At first, things were smooth and I didn't witness many conflicts between them, but as I grew older, I began to see James's true nature. He was abusive. For James, my academic performance was everything. He constantly pressured me to improve, and if anyone outperformed me, he would get enraged. Even the slightest dip in my grades would result in him hitting me and calling me stupid. He frequently threatened to send me back to the orphanage if my marks didn't meet his expectations. As a child, I didn't realize this threat was empty, and it terrified me each time he mentioned it. I worked tirelessly to avoid being sent back. I also observed Lorraine and James having arguments, which would end with James dragging her into their bedroom. She would emerge with bruises on her hands and face. At first, I didn't understand what was happening, but it soon became clear that he was physically abusing her. To keep me from witnessing his violence, he would isolate Lorraine. I couldn't understand why Lorraine never called the police. After their fights, she would just sit and cry for hours, while James would drink beer and watch TV. Realizing James's abusive nature made me fear being alone with him or doing anything that might upset him. But as anyone who has lived in an abusive environment knows, abusers will find any excuse to lash out. No matter how careful I was or how hard I tried to avoid provoking him, he always found a reason to be angry. Initially, it was all about my grades, but as I grew older, his focus shifted. It wasn't just about academics anymore. He criticized everything. From the clothes I wore to the friends I chose and even any romantic interests I had. He insisted I come straight home from school, claiming that spending time with friends was a distraction and that they would amount to nothing. According to him, I needed to keep my focus solely on my studies. Unbeknownst to James, Lorraine discreetly allowed me to spend an hour with my friends after school. Knowing that James wouldn't return until later in the evening, she saw it as a small chance for me to enjoy some normalcy and social interaction beyond the tense atmosphere at home. These brief moments away from the constant pressure and scrutiny were precious to me, and I valued the time spent with my friends, even if it was short-lived. Lorraine's quiet act of kindness meant a great deal to me. However, things took a turn for the worse when James lost his job. The job loss seemed to heighten his frustration and anger, worsening the already abusive environment at home. With the added strain of financial instability, James became even more unpredictable and volatile, lashing out over the smallest things. I recall one night when Lorraine had just finished making dinner. As James sat down and glanced at the meal, he erupted into a furious rant about how it didn't meet his standards. He began yelling and slamming the table, berating her and threatening to throw her out if she couldn't cook properly. In his rage, he threw his plate against the wall, leaving Lorraine and me in a state of fear as we watched him. I could feel my whole body trembling. When I finally ate the food, I found nothing wrong with Lorraine's cooking. Over time, James's drinking worsened. With his unemployment and idle days, beer cans accumulated in the living room each morning, which Lorraine had to clean up. I also found myself unable to spend time with my friends as James would harshly criticize me if I was even a minute late coming home from school. At 15, a classmate named Harry confessed his feelings for me and asked me out on a date. Despite my anxiety over James finding out, I was eager to experience a date and explore my feelings as a teenager. So, despite my worries, I agreed to go out with Harry. We met at a local coffee shop after school and spent the afternoon chatting and getting to know each other. That date turned out to be one of the best decisions of my life, as it marked the beginning of our love story. Harry was everything James was not, gentle and kind to everyone, including animals. He would bring me my favorite flowers whenever he could, saving up his pocket money to do so. Having never had a good role model, I didn't expect much, but Harry treated me with the care and respect I had always wanted. James was always a bit suspicious and would question me about whether I was spending time with any boys. I would deny it, silently hoping he wouldn't uncover the truth. Fortunately, not having a phone meant there were no incriminating texts he could discover. Harry and I took great care to keep our relationship private, even avoiding telling our friends to prevent any gossip. Harry understood my fear of James and was willing to keep our relationship a secret. When prom approached, Harry and I decided to attend with our group of friends to avoid drawing any unwanted attention. However, when James learned of my plans to go to prom, he outright forbade it. He dismissed it as a waste of time and refused to buy me a dress. I didn't really care about the dress. I just wanted to enjoy the evening with my friends. I begged him to let me go, reminding him of my good grades and how I had met his expectations. He scolded me, belittling my friendships and insisting that prom was insignificant. Lorraine disagreed and argued with James, believing there was no reason for me to stay home while my peers enjoyed themselves. James insisted that teenagers lacked a sense of right and wrong and that he wouldn't allow me to go out simply to have fun when I could stay home and be safe. Despite my pleas and attempts to explain how important this event was to me, he remained resolute, dismissing my feelings as trivial. He even threatened to lock me out if I tried to sneak out for prom. On the night of the dance, I was the only one who stayed behind, spending the evening crying alone in my room. I was growing increasingly weary of living with James. After high school, it became even harder to see Harry since I wasn't allowed out and didn't have a phone. I asked James for a phone, but he insisted I didn't need one at my age. I argued that I'd be going to college and that everyone had a phone, but he said I'd have to buy one myself if I wanted it. That's when I decided to get a part-time job. Though the pay was modest, it allowed me to earn some money and gain a bit of independence. It also meant I could spend time with Harry without James finding out, using work as an excuse while I met up with him. Eventually, I received the incredible news that I had been accepted into an Ivy League university with a full scholarship. This was a significant accomplishment, as no one from my town had ever achieved it before. James took it upon himself to brag about my success to anyone who would listen, proclaiming how proud he was of me. Despite his constant boasting, he never actually congratulated me personally, instead acting as though my achievement was a reflection of his own success. After receiving my college acceptance, I felt an enormous sense of relief. At last, James had nothing to complain about, as I had fulfilled his greatest dream by securing a spot in a prestigious college with a scholarship. With my job and academic success, he couldn't label me as lazy anymore. His newfound satisfaction led him to agree to buy me a phone and allowed me to use the money I earned from work for college expenses. He even permitted me to hang out with my friends after work. For the first time, I felt like I could enjoy life a bit, just like everyone else. Harry and I knew we'd be separated when we went to college, but we promised to meet up whenever we could. Our intimacy was careful and limited, with both of us taking precautions. A couple of weeks later, I began experiencing unusual symptoms that resembled those of my period, but without actually having it. Being perceptive, I sensed something was wrong with my body, and I found myself craving food at odd hours. Panicking, I told Harry that I needed to take a pregnancy test, and he agreed. I took 3 tests, all of which came back positive. The shock was overwhelming, and I collapsed on the floor, crying uncontrollably. It felt like I was living through one of my worst nightmares. Harry tried to comfort me, but I was trembling with fear. I knew that if James discovered I was pregnant, especially right before college, he would react with unimaginable anger. Harry reassured me that the decision was entirely mine and that he would support me no matter what. He suggested talking to his parents first and then approaching James together to prevent any violent reactions. Given my difficult home situation, Harry was genuinely concerned for my safety. His parents were incredibly understanding. His mother embraced me and comforted me, saying that such things happen to many people and not to worry too much. They agreed to come to my place to help break the news to James. When Lorraine and James were informed of the pregnancy, they were utterly shocked. Lorraine asked me twice if I was certain, and I confirmed with the results from multiple tests. James, however, erupted in anger, accusing me of being a product of his reluctance to adopt children from strangers, citing their unpredictable nature. He hurled a barrage of insults at me, claiming I had ruined my life. Harry's parents tried to calm James down, but he directed his fury at them, blaming them for the situation and appearing ready to physically confront Harry, who sat quietly in the corner. Overcome with emotion, I started crying and told James that I wasn't planning to keep the baby, so he had nothing to worry about. I assured him that everything could return to normal, and I would still go to college as planned. At that point, Lorraine asked to speak with James privately. They left the room while I sat there, crying and anxiously fidgeting. Harry's parents looked at me with sympathy. When Lorraine and James returned, Lorraine's words struck me like a tidal wave. She proposed that we didn't necessarily have to give up the baby, suggesting that I could carry the pregnancy to term and then transfer my parental rights to them. I sat there in stunned silence as Lorraine stressed that the child was a gift from God and urged us not to consider other options. James supported Lorraine's view, suggesting that this arrangement would be ideal, especially since Lorraine was already pregnant herself. His words left me completely bewildered, and I struggled to grasp what he was proposing. James revealed that Lorraine had only recently discovered her pregnancy and had kept it private while processing the news. With my own pregnancy, they now saw an opportunity to raise both children together as siblings. The shock of their suggestion left me speechless, grappling with the gravity of their proposal and the unexpected turn of events. Harry's parents were equally stunned and quickly expressed their disapproval. However, James interrupted, asserting that the decision was not theirs to make, and looked at me expectantly, waiting for my response. Overwhelmed with anxiety, I knew deep down that I couldn't agree to Lorraine and James's proposal. The idea of giving up my child to be raised in an environment reminiscent of my own troubled upbringing was unbearable. Although Lorraine had shown herself to be a caring mother in many ways, I couldn't ignore the fact that she couldn't shield herself from James's behavior, let alone ensure my child's safety. The thought of subjecting my unborn child to the same uncertainty and potential danger was unacceptable. While I cherished the thought of becoming a mother one day, I knew the timing and circumstances were far from ideal. I couldn't bring a child into the world under these conditions, knowing I couldn't guarantee their safety and well-being. I firmly told James that, Although I was glad to be gaining a sibling soon, I couldn't proceed with the pregnancy. I was neither mentally nor physically strong enough to handle it. The idea of watching my child grow up with Lorraine and James, while pretending they were just a sibling, was inconceivable. Living a lie and denying my child the truth about their parentage was something I simply couldn't endure. When I shared my decision, Lorraine broke down in tears, expressing her disappointment that I couldn't do this for her despite all the sacrifices she had made for me. James, visibly enraged, got up and began pacing the room. I tried to explain my stance, but they refused to understand. Harry's mother stepped in, supporting my choice and offering to arrange an appointment with a gynecologist to move forward with the procedure. Lorraine's crying intensified, and James started shouting, asking if I was satisfied now that I was causing her so much pain. He then demanded that I pack my things and leave the house. My shock was palpable as James declared he was fed up with me, accusing me of being ungrateful and selfish for not giving them my child. Harry's parents gently urged me to pack up quickly, clearly troubled by James's volatile behavior. I hurried upstairs to gather my important documents, photo albums, and as many clothes as I could. When I came back downstairs, James warned me to take whatever I could carry because he planned to throw out and burn the rest of my belongings the next day. I tried to speak with Lorraine but she wouldn't even look at me. As I left, James told me I should never come back. I was bewildered and heartbroken, unable to understand what I had done to warrant such ruthless rejection. Harry and his parents generously offered me a place to stay, and I returned to their home. The following days were a blur as they took me to the gynecologist, where we scheduled the necessary procedure. It was a difficult decision for both me and Harry, but given the circumstances, we knew it was the best choice for our future. After the procedure, I spent a few days recovering with Harry by my side, offering unwavering support. He and his parents were incredibly kind and did everything they could to help me through this challenging time. Throughout this ordeal, James and Lorraine never reached out to me. When the day came for me to move into college, I texted James, hoping he might have forgiven me by then. Instead, he responded with harsh words, calling me a failure and a disappointment and accusing me of turning into a prostitute. He said he didn't want his biological child to end up like me. His cruel message cut me deeply, and I cried for hours. They had been the only parents I knew, and now, with their own children on the way, they had severed ties with me. My college years were challenging but ultimately rewarding. I juggled a part-time job with my studies, working hard to maintain my grades. It was tough, but I was determined to succeed. Fortunately, Harry kept his promise and supported me throughout. He would visit me at college whenever he could, and his constant encouragement helped me through the rough patches. During holidays, his parents often invited me to spend time with them, and they began to feel like family to me. I graduated with honors, achieving the distinction of KL, and Harry and his parents were there to celebrate my graduation. I secured a good job in my field, and it was a proud moment knowing all my hard work had paid off. Harry and I eventually moved in together, and our relationship grew stronger with time. We supported each other through life's ups and downs, and after several years, we decided to get married. Our wedding was a beautiful celebration of our love and commitment, surrounded by our closest friends and family. I didn't even consider inviting James and Lorraine to the wedding. As a married couple, Harry and I have continued to build our life together. Recently, we took a significant step by buying a new house and renting out our old one. Our new home has become a cozy haven where we create new memories and plan for the future. We bought the new place to be closer to Harry's aging parents, who have become like family to me as well. I want to be there for them in any way I can. It's been almost 20 years since James and Lorraine kicked me out, and I barely remember them now. Over the years, I haven't dwelled on them much, though I do recall spending my first year of college grieving their absence. By my second year, I resolved to forge a new life for myself, free from their rejection. It was painful. And building this life on my own took immense strength. They've never reached out to me and I haven't felt the need to check in on them either. Throughout these years, Harry has been my steadfast companion and partner in every sense. Although we never had children, our two beloved dogs have brought us immense joy. We visit Harry's parents every other weekend and frequently enjoy trips and discovering new restaurants together. Looking back, I feel that my life has turned out well, and I wish I could embrace my 17-year-old self and reassure her about her future. Recently, I received a friend request on Facebook from someone named Matt with a surname that seemed familiar. When I checked his profile, I was taken aback by how much he resembled James. I accepted his request and he sent me a greeting. I replied, and he soon asked if I knew anyone named James and Lorraine. My heart raced as I realized he was their son. Nervous yet determined to be honest, I confirmed that I knew them since they had adopted me when I was 5. Matt expressed a strong desire to talk if I was comfortable, So I agreed and gave him my number. When he called, the conversation started off awkwardly, but Matt soon shared that he had always known about a child his parents had before him because he had seen my pictures in the family photo album. Whenever he asked about it, his parents would dodge the question. He had been searching for me for a long time, having learned my name from our hometown, and he had recently stumbled upon my profile by chance. His sole reason for reaching out was to uncover the truth. As I recounted the painful events of my past, including how his parents had asked me to give up my child and then expelled me when I refused, I could feel the weight of the emotions. I described their absence from my life over the years and how I had managed to cope thanks to the support of my husband's parents. The conversation was emotionally charged, and I revealed long-buried feelings. Matt's voice conveyed shock and disbelief as he absorbed my account. After a period of silence, he told me he had no idea his parents had treated me so cruelly. He had always believed their story that I had left on my own accord. He thanked me sincerely for my honesty and apologized on behalf of his parents, expressing regret for the pain they had caused me. Since our conversation, I've felt grateful for Matt's effort to reach out and his understanding, which has brought me some comfort and validation. However, I worry about how James and Lorraine will react when they learn that I've shared the truth with Matt. Did I make the right choice in revealing everything, or would it have been better to keep silent? Update 1. I wanted to share that my initial concerns were valid. Within just 24 hours of Matt reaching out to me, Lorraine and James began bombarding me with calls and texts. Since I've kept the same number all these years, it was relatively easy for them to find me. Their messages have been filled with anger and accusations, mostly centered around why I disclosed family secrets to Matt. James's message, in particular, was harsh, insisting I should have kept quiet as I had for years and not interfered between him and his son. Overwhelmed and unsure of how to handle the situation, I've been dodging their calls and messages, uncertain of the best way to address this unexpected confrontation. Update 2. I informed Harry about the situation. He was unaware of Matt's outreach and, upon learning that I had shared our past, he felt I shouldn't have done so. His concern wasn't about the truth being wrong but rather that James was clearly unstable and that this revelation would only stir up unnecessary drama in our lives. I also spoke with Matt, who told me he confronted James and Lorraine after our discussion. They attempted to deny everything, labeling me as a liar and accusing me of using them until I could escape to college. Despite their claims, Matt didn't believe them and told them to stay away from his family. He also informed them he would be cutting them off financially. Matt revealed that he and his wife had recently adopted twins, but James and Lorraine had refused to visit them, which had made Matt question their behavior. After learning about my past, Matt understood why they might have been unhappy with his adoption. He assured me he would ask them to leave us alone and extended an invitation for me to visit his twins whenever I could. He expressed a desire to get to know me better, given our sibling connection. I'm touched by his kindness and might take him up on his offer to visit his family with Harry. Update 3. It's been 7 months since my last update, and for those asking, here's what's new. I decided to block James and Lorraine from all communication channels, which has stopped their threatening messages. Matt intervened and spoke to them, so they had no choice but to back off. Harry and I have visited Matt and his wife at least 4 times over the past few months. Each visit has been warm and welcoming, and we've spent hours reconnecting, sharing stories, and bonding over our childhoods. I've also had the joy of spending time with Matt's twins, who are delightful. I'm deeply grateful that Matt reached out, and the connection with him and his family has been a source of healing and joy for me. My family abandoned me because my sister blamed me for her divorce. I ruined her life years later with an email that revealed everything. Almost 7 years ago, my family removed me from their lives and kicked me out of the house. I, 29M, was 22 at the time and lacked the financial stability to rent an apartment on my own. What had transpired was so unexpected that I had no time to prepare, either psychologically or financially. My sister was the cause of all of this. My sister, Hannah, 37F, and I have never been close due to our huge age difference. She married her partner of 3 years, Pete, 39M, when she was 27 and they were married for 3 years. They divorced after 3 years of marriage because Hannah suspected Pete of having an affair with one of my friends. I had been living with my parents after college because I had recently begun working and wanted to save money before moving out. My parents were fine with the arrangement as well, until my sister announced her divorce. She returned home one day, crying uncontrollably, and stated that she had filed for divorce because her husband had been cheating on her for 6 months. Then she threw me under the bus for introducing my friend to him. My friend Emily, 28F, was attempting to gain weight, and Pete, who was a licensed dietitian, volunteered to help her. I had introduced her to him, and it turned out she was the one Pete had been cheating on my sister with. I was startled that this was occurring because, while Emily and I were not particularly close, I thought she was a decent lady who would never become involved with a married man. Furthermore, dishonesty was out of character for Pete as well. He was completely charmed with Hannah and only had positive things to say about her, so I found it quite difficult to think he cheated on her. I had serious reservations, but my parents immediately trusted her and did not question anything, despite the fact that she had no evidence of him cheating. They simply accepted her word for it. I'm not going to hold it against them since they would prefer their own daughter over their son-in-law regardless of who was correct. What I didn't understand was why they so quickly kicked me out simply because Hannah said so. She stormed in one day, had a tantrum, and persuaded my parents to kick me out merely because I had introduced Emily to Pete. She blamed me for destroying her marriage, and my parents agreed for some reason. I was upset and tried to stop my parents, but they refused to listen. They warned me that if I didn't leave, they would kick me out. In only one day, I had lost both my family and my home and had no idea where to go. I was sobbing on the pavement with all my belongings for about an hour before I was able to gather myself and go to a friend's house for the night. I tried phoning them every day for the next 2 days but had no success. My friend was gracious enough to let me stay at his house until I could find an apartment for myself. Unfortunately, my parents were convinced that I was in the wrong and was to blame for the divorce. My parents had actually told me that they were disgusted by what I'd done before kicking me out, which made no sense given I wasn't the one Pete cheated on. They had blocked my number, so I couldn't reach them at all. When I attempted to visit them, my mother threatened to call the cops if I did not leave. After that, I concluded they were serious and blamed me for whatever had transpired. I don't suppose I had any reason to be surprised, given that my sister was always the favorite child. My parents had never intended for a second child, so I was constantly sidelined. While I didn't care for it growing up, I had no idea it would lead to something so significant. Thinking about it now, I suppose I should have seen it coming, but honestly, I don't think anyone in my position could have anticipated something like this. Anyway, for the following few weeks, I tried to figure things out on my own. Since Hannah and my parents had effectively cut me off and I had no way to contact them, I couldn't chat with Pete since he had also blocked me, which made no sense to me. I couldn't find him either because Hannah and Pete had moved out of the house they shared and gone to live with their separate parents. So, with no way to contact anyone involved, I turned to Emily, my last choice for finding out the truth. As I previously stated, Emily and I were not very close, but I had to do what was necessary. I asked to meet with her one day and explain the problem. I questioned her if Hannah's claims about the affair were accurate and she flatly denied it. To be really honest, I believed her. Emily told me that she'd only seen Pete a few times, and just professionally, so there was nothing going on between them. She had no understanding why Hannah would say such nasty things about her. She even told me she'd had a stable partner for a couple of years and was planning to marry in a few months. She even showed me photos. What Emily told me was far more believable than anything Hannah stated. I had no proof, but I knew Hannah was lying about the real cause for the divorce. However, because I lacked proof, I was unable to return to my family, and I could not have returned without it. Back then, I was yearning to return to my family because I missed them so much, despite all they had done to me. With time, I was able to overcome it and move on with my life. I found a place and made my employment the focus of my life so that I could distract myself. I also needed to pay the bills, so it was a better way to cope than sitting around feeling unhappy. I was hurting a lot because I didn't have any other options, but I knew I had to keep on, with or without the support of my family. Years have passed and I am doing a lot better in life. I relocated from my small apartment to a much larger one, and I even proposed to my girlfriend of 2 years about a week ago. Our engagement post proved to be a game changer for me. Just a few days after that post, I received an email out of nowhere that not only revealed the full tale of Hannah's divorce, but also provided all of the answers I needed, along with documentation. My fiancée, Liza, 30F, normally just posted about us on Instagram, but the photo from our engagement ended up on her Facebook feed, where she had a larger audience. It was a public post, so a lot of people saw it, including my ex-brother-in-law Peter. He happened to be someone my fiancée met at a conference a few years ago, since she was a doctor, and she ended up joining him on Facebook, where he found me. It truly is a tiny world, and for the first time, I felt pleased with it. Pete contacted me a few days after we posted, but instead of texting me on social media, he chose to send an anonymous email. He subsequently claimed that he did this so he wouldn't feel strange about what he was doing, as it had been several years since his divorce, and he didn't want to appear like a disgruntled loser who hadn't moved on from what happened. Besides, he was the one who blocked me in the first place. So he felt strange and guilty about getting back in touch with me about something that happened so many years ago. The email contained the entire tale and documentation of what happened 7 years ago. When I finished reading it, I couldn't believe my eyes. Apparently, my sister was the one cheating on Pete, not the other way around, as she had been telling us for so long. Not only was that a massive lie, but she had been cheating on Pete with a friend of mine, just as she had accused him of. My friend Frank, 28M, worked as a clerk at a grocery store near Hannah's house back then. I would never have noticed the connection myself because I had never seen them together. I suppose they had kept it sufficiently under wraps, but not enough for Pete to find out. When questioned, Hannah told Pete that it was all my fault because I had introduced her to Frank and even told her how much he needed her help because he was an aspiring singer and she was a really excellent singer herself. She agreed to help him, and they were in love before they realized it. She even admitted that I was involved and had helped them keep things quiet for so long. All of this was obviously a fabrication, and I had no idea Frank and Hannah were up to anything. Pete was enraged when he found out and blocked my entire family, which he now admits was idiotic of him. However, he was so enraged that he didn't think much about his conduct. Of course, he told me all of this in person because the email was designed to be as impersonal as possible. He did not want it traced back to him, but I figured it out. He had provided copies of emails between my sister and Frank in which they discussed how easy it was to dupe Pete. The emails were filled with declarations of love and plans for where they would meet next. Hannah couldn't refute any of this because she signed off on the emails with her middle name, which few people were aware of. I had her dead to rights. After combing through Liza's Facebook friends, I concluded that Pete must have sent me the email. My gut intuition told me that it had to do with social networking. When I eventually discovered Pete on her friend list, I contacted him. We planned to meet a few days ago, and he informed me that he learned about what Hannah had told her family from Emily, who had met him a few years before. I had told Emily to keep my side of the story a secret, and I was cursing myself when I realized that if I hadn't said that, she would have informed Pete about it, and I would have been able to prove my innocence a long time ago. Anyway, Emily and Pete ran into one another a few years ago, and she ended up questioning him about their divorce. They started conversing and he eventually learned what Hannah had told us. He said that he wanted to speak with me about it and tell me the truth. But he didn't because he felt strange. I swear, if Pete hadn't been so easily embarrassed, my life would have been much easier. I did forgive him though, since I needed his cooperation to completely destroy my sister, and I knew he would agree. Hannah had clearly been lying to my parents in order to secure financial assistance during her divorce, and she had even thrown me under the bus for good measure, knowing that one discussion with Emily would disclose the truth. I couldn't believe someone, particularly someone related to me by blood, could be so selfish. I'm sure Hannah never bothered to correct the record, and my parents had simply accepted whatever lies she'd been giving them during her divorce. She knew that if the truth about her being the cheater was out, she would be in serious danger, and she simply couldn't risk it. That's too bad. The truth had finally come out, and I was going to use it to ruin her life, just as she had ruined mine all those years before. I had not seen my family in 7 years, so I wasn't sure if they still lived in the same house, but they hadn't moved. I checked this with an old neighbor before arriving, and I was relieved to discover that Hannah was still living with them as well. That didn't surprise me because Hannah had always been a couch slug who loathed doing her own job. If she could live with our old parents and have them perform all of her duties, she would. Anyway, 2 days ago, Pete and I unexpectedly arrived at their place. My mother answered the door, and we hardly gave her time to process what was occurring before we walked in. My father and Hannah were also present in the living room. We were back together as one happy family, but only for a short time. Their faces turned nasty as soon as we entered. My father instantly threatened us, saying he'd call the cops if we didn't leave. But I shot back, telling him he could do whatever he wanted once he saw the documents we were about to show them. My parents looked perplexed, but Hannah looked like she was about to vomit and excused herself, heading to her room. I assumed she was trying to flee, but there was no use in doing so. Pete then proceeded to show my parents the divorce papers and screenshots of Hannah and Frank's correspondence, while I described the true story. Pete also told my parents that Hannah had to give up our family heirloom, my grandmother's diamond ring. In the settlement, she had to sell the ring because she couldn't afford to pay him the money. She is a high school teacher. My parents were already terrified by what we had told them, and this was simply the cherry on top. We watched the drama unfold as my father demanded an explanation from Hannah for all that had occurred. Despite all of the evidence against her, she continued to lie and cover up the truth, so my father kicked her out. He packed her belongings for her, handed her the bags and then told us all to leave their house. I didn't need to be told twice before leaving with Pete, as my sister cried and pleaded with my parents to let her back in, just like I did all those years ago. This was excellent karma, and I could not be happier. It's been a few days since then, and my sister just arrived at my house a few hours ago, insisting that I immediately make amends with my parents. I had no idea how she located me, but I informed her that I no longer owed her anything. She had ruined my life once, so I returned the favor and we were now equal. I swear she had no pride left because the moment I said that, she burst into tears and accused me of being a monster. I didn't care about her drama and closed the door as she began to sob uncontrollably. I just put on my headphones and listened to music as Liza, my fiancée, worked in her study, so that neither of us would be disturbed. Hannah eventually departed, but not before leaving a message with a marker on my door, reminding me that I was nothing more than a vengeful monster. To be honest, I see nothing wrong with what I did and have no regrets. But Hannah appears to believe that I am the villain here. I just did to her what she had done to me some years ago, only I told the truth, whereas she did nothing but lie and threw me under the bus. So what do you all think? Am I the hole who ruined my sister's life and got her kicked out 7 years after she accused me of causing her divorce? Update 1. Hannah is still troubling me, despite the fact that she was kicked out a week ago. I had to threaten her with calling the cops after she called me for the 14th time today before she stopped. I'm not sure how she found my phone number and address, but that's not what I'm interested in right now. Hannah is attempting to get sympathy from me since, apparently, a school teacher's salary is insufficient for her to support herself. But I don't think that's the case. She's just furious that she has to seek a home and pay her own rent, energy and groceries now that our parents have booted her out. I don't feel really sad for her. In case you were asking, yeah, I did block her phone multiple times, but I think she's having her pals add me to conference calls, so it's pointless. My parents are as awful, if not worse than Hannah. They found me on Facebook and saw the post announcing my engagement, so they want to be a part of my life again and have expressed a wish to attend my wedding. They have not apologized yet, but for some reason, they expect me to simply invite them to my wedding, which is meant to be a very special day for me. I don't know where these individuals get the courage to say things like this, but I'm not reacting to any of it. Liza and I have had a blast reading their texts because there's no chance they're genuine right now. It's all just very sad for them. Update 2. Hannah showed up at my house again after I threatened to report her for harassment yesterday. I was about to go for work, but she stopped me by flinging herself across the hood of my car and refusing to move until I spoke with her. It was really frustrating, so I ended up contacting the cops this time. They carried her away while she yelled and wept, attempting to paint me as the evil guy. But nobody believed her sad girl play. It took some time to file charges against her, but once I did, I left for work since I didn't want to let this minor incident spoil my day. I was confident that my parents would bail her out because she was their favorite, and I was proven correct. After getting her out, my parents texted me a lengthy message about how I was being far too harsh on them for an honest mistake they made nearly 10 years ago. It was comical since nothing about what my sister and dad subjected me to was either honest or incorrect. They knew exactly what they were doing and were fully aware of how nasty they were. Despite the fact that I had nowhere else to go, they nonetheless sent me out on the street. So now that I can do the same to them, I see no reason to be forgiving or compassionate. I texted my parents back, telling them that they had lost the right to tell me what I could and couldn't do years ago, so they should stop fooling themselves. I have not blocked them yet because I haven't had time to check my messages, but I will shortly. Hopefully, I'll be free of this entire family for good. Update 3. I just got home from work and checked my social media, only to discover that my folks had sent me yet another lengthy message. Liza and I went through it together, and I swear it was the funniest thing I had ever read. I suppose the poor people are unaware that nothing they say or do today will cause me any harm. I am just giggling at how delusional and sad they are. Apparently they still consider us to be family, and they have taken Hannah back in. They've decided that both of their children need a second chance, as if I've ever done anything wrong. So while they have welcomed my sister back in, they also expect me and Liza to come to their house shortly for dinner so that we may settle our disagreements civilly before the wedding. It was bold of them to think that I would want them at my wedding in the first place. We got a good laugh at their dumb message. After that, I wrote back, indicating I had no interest in anything they had asked us to. I was content living away from them, as I had for the previous 7 years. They had shown me that I was better off without them, and I would be eternally grateful for that. I didn't need them anymore, and I didn't want their supposed forgiveness. They may continue to play happy family with my sister as they had done so far. With that last text, I blocked them for good since I no longer wanted the chuckles. I was done, and I was leaving. I'm sure they'll try to contact me in some way soon, but unfortunately for them, I'm done with it. Liza is the only family I need for now, and I'm content with just her. Unfortunately, my dad and sister have never been able to think beyond themselves, and I doubt they ever will. So the next time they contact me, they will speak with my lawyer, and that is a commitment. After discovering my husband's autism and kitty food preference, I faced deceit and marital stress, leading to my decision to divorce. Well, it's been a lot longer than the 1-week update I promised. I could make excuses, but I won't. For those of you who don't want to read my original post, I asked for help with my husband's food preference issues, and through talking with many people on here and, ultimately, his mother, it was revealed that he was diagnosed with autism as a child. Some of the comments on my original post were not so kind. I got a lot of accusations that still hurt me. Some just make me angry, particularly the person who commented simply, "Please don't bully him. He's my goddamn husband. Not a schoolyard friend, not a sibling, not a child. Infantilizing him doesn't help his case at all." Moving on. I was very upset as he had never mentioned anything to me. We've discussed all sorts of medical issues together, but his diagnosis never came up. I want to stress this. This isn't a matter of me not wanting to be married to an autistic man. This is a matter of my husband keeping something important from me and causing me a great deal of stress that could have been avoided if I was aware of his diagnosis. For example, I continuously pushed him to try new foods or attend concerts or visit loud amusement parks. I knew he wasn't particularly thrilled about any of those things, but they are all very normal couple activities that I wanted us to experience together. Had I been aware of his autism, I would have had a better understanding of how negatively these things affected him, and made more of an effort to integrate things he liked with things I liked, maybe a smaller local band, or a craft fair instead of an amusement park. Anyways, that's the backstory. Read below for the update. Update. I confronted him about my conversation with his mother the night before our counseling appointment. I made sure to bring it up casually so I didn't become angry again. He tried to brush me off at first, saying he didn't know what I was talking about. After talking for a bit, he eventually confessed that he not only knew of the diagnosis but deliberately kept it from me. He said I was his dream and he didn't want to do anything to ruin our perfect relationship. I explained how him keeping this from me hurt me. I explained how I could have been there to support him instead of feeling like he needed to hide. He said he wasn't ashamed of it at all. He explained that it's just not something that affects him anymore. I, again, explained how it affects me, but he didn't seem to care. I didn't show him the post I made, but I used some of the advice from you all to try to explain why his autism really does in fact still affect his life. We went to bed upset. The next day he acted like nothing happened. We ate breakfast, he had chicken nuggets, and went about our day. I kept expecting him to bring it up, but he never did. I didn't have the nerve to bring it up again until later at the marriage counselor's office. I spoke to the counselor so as not to seem accusing and explained that this was an issue that bothered me. My husband actually laughed and said he assumed I'd gotten over it by now. When I explained that no, I really hadn't, he got angry with me and stormed out. The counselor tried to mediate, but it wasn't much use as my husband went to wait in the car. I was worried he'd leave without me, so I cut the meeting short. Our ride home was quiet. It wasn't until we got home that I said I was worried he was keeping other things from me too. He said he'd been reading online about how women can't understand autism and therefore he didn't think it was important to tell me about it. I said that was the weakest excuse I'd ever heard. He then said that I'd leave him if I knew. I said if I left him it'd be because he's a liar. Apparently he told all of our mutual friends that he'd just been diagnosed with autism and I was considering leaving him because of it. Now many of our friends won't talk to me and act very cold when we run into each other in public. I don't know what else he's told them, but I think he told someone I cheated on him as a fake account has been commenting horrible things about me and my supposed sexual habits on all of my Instagram posts. I keep reporting them, but then it seems like another just pops up in its place. I haven't decided if divorce is the right path. I know he's been browsing incel and other bitter male-centric websites. One of his friends is a self-described incel, so I'm even more convinced that this isn't the man I married. I'm mostly just confused. I've been avoiding him at home and it feels like more of a roommate situation at this point. He doesn't really leave his den until it's time for work, and then he's back in the den until bed. It seems like everything is messed up, just from me wanting to help. I don't even know what to expect at this point, much less how to move on from here. Edit. There are so many more comments than I anticipated. I'm trying to at least read through most of them, although I think I'm past my emotional ability to reply. I'm really shocked at how overwhelmingly supportive people are. Thank you. I'm going to be discussing divorce with a lawyer. I don't know how to bring it up with him, but I'm past the point of caring. You're all right. I dread coming home to him in the evenings. I dread if he will miraculously want to talk. This isn't healthy for either of us. At the very least, some time apart would be good. That's all for now. I don't think I'll update past this, as I'm already uncomfortable with how quickly this blew up. But I will be living elsewhere by the end of the month. My wife will not shut up, and I'm not sure I can take it that much longer. Is it possible for that to be a reason to leave? I'm not sure if I should have posted this on AITA instead. But here goes. My wife will not shut up. I'm not talking about your usual chatty Kathy. I mean, she almost literally will not shut up. She will talk continuously from the moment she knows I am within earshot. Not just in the same room. I mean, as soon as it's reasonable to assume that I can hear her. She will not stop talking until I'm gone, and sometimes not even then. On more than one occasion, I've gone into the bathroom, turned on the loud exhaust fan, taken a leisurely dump, and then returned to hear her cheerfully engaged in the same conversation she was enjoying before I went in. She also refuses to use the exhaust fan while she's in the restroom because it would prevent her from being heard. So I get to hear all the bathroom noises on top of whatever Homeric epic about her friend's cousin's girlfriend's hairdresser she's blathering on about. I once drove from Tampa, Florida to Chicago, Illinois with her, before we were married. I'm such an idiot. Without saying more than 10 sentences. She did not stop talking the entire way. The entire way. Television onto a show I like? Pfft, that's not a problem. She'll happily turn the volume down so it doesn't get in the way. Having sex? That's the perfect time to tell me about how Olivia Newton-John still has the leather pants she wore in Grease and she, brace yourself, still fits in them. Really? Needless to say, we don't go to the movies. Ever. I've been shushed out of too many theaters. I get it. She grew up in a huge Italian Catholic family in the Bronx. If you don't talk loud and constantly, you don't get to talk at all. I, on the other hand, grew up in a Scandinavian family with 2 children. To this day, I'm not sure we ever had a conversation in our house. I actually often wonder if that's what made me attractive to her. I was taught to politely listen to people and then wait for them to finish before replying. She never finishes, or takes a breath it sometimes seems. So to her I'm paying rapt attention to her no matter how much she talks. That's not true though. Another difference between people of Swedish heritage is that we don't use filler words for acknowledgement. Other than the Minnesotan nah, useful on every occasion, we're pretty much silent when we listen to others. No or yeah or OMG needed. A nod of the head every 10 minutes or so is all you need to convey your attentiveness. I think it has a lot to with living in the frigid north. You keep your mouth open as much as my wife does, and your teeth are going to shatter from the cold. To her, that's like being in the room with a dead person. She's always stopping to ask, "Are you even listening?" Or say, "You never pay attention to me." Or even quiz me with, "What did I just say?" I've become an expert at storing the last 2 to 4 words she says and parroting them back at her. She'll be like, blah blah blah. And then she told him she wasn't taking that kind of crap anymore. And I'll go, "That kind of crap?" As if I had any idea what kind of crap it was or who it was that wouldn't take it anymore. And she'll say, "Yeah," and think I've been paying attention the whole time. I joke about it a lot, but it's actually getting to the point where it's a problem. Our son is 7 years old, and he has developed a pronounced stutter because she interrupts him constantly. Growing up in her house, if anyone paused even for a millisecond, that was grounds for talking over them. And you talked loud so they didn't finish. My son apparently inherited some of my less staccato speech patterns, and she basically just uses that to interrupt and take over the conversation. It got so bad that he started automatically stopping and restarting words, even when not being interrupted. I didn't know that was considered a stutter until we went to one of those parent-teacher night things, and a teacher listened to wife and then turned to me and said, "Well, at least now I know why Josh has a stutter." Just like that. She's failed at least one job interview because of this. I know because I lined it up with a business acquaintance myself. He called me up and said sorry, but he just couldn't take being in the same room with her because she wouldn't stop talking. We rarely are invited for a second couple's date. She monopolizes the conversation every time we go out with other people. Who wants more than one does of that? You're probably wondering, well, have you told her about this? Yes. Many times. Sometimes jokingly. Sometimes with utter seriousness. The reactions vary from anger, talks louder, higher, faster, and uses lots more swear words, to tears. She's the only person I know who can carry on a totally unrelated conversation while sobbing hysterically. The one thing that doesn't happen is her talking any less. I try not to let it get to me. She's a very affectionate woman. Loves me to death. Mother of my child. Pretty as the day we met, prettier even. We still get plenty of alone time. Granted, she won't shut up while we're doing it, but I'm pretty busy so I don't really notice as much. But it does get to me. It's selfish and shows a lack of self-awareness. There's a time and a place for enthusiastic conversation, and they're not always and everywhere. I know the answer to the problem. I have to talk back. In effect, the only thing that possibly could shut her up is for me to do the same thing as she does. I would have to interrupt at the slightest pause. I would have to talk louder, yelling if necessary, when she tries to interrupt me. I would have to learn to use Italian hand gestures to emphasize my points and chop off her objections. But I'm not Italian. I'm a waspy pale dude who grew up in a household that would have made a mortuary sound like a middle school cafeteria. 12 years of this has finally pushed me to the brink. I'm not sure I can take it that much longer. I'm just not sure if I could get a word in to tell the judge why I'm there in his divorce court. My wife wouldn't let me. TL.dr. Wife will not shut up. Is that reasonable grounds for leaving her? Edit, obligatory Reddit. OMG, I had no idea this would blow up. Which is true. I thought maybe a couple of people would just call me an asshole and that would be it. But RIP. Inbox. It was nice to know you. So in the interest of not replying to every comment, I will try to address some of the common ones and answer some of the questions I saw popping up multiple times. Also thanks for the, often hilarious, advice. Q1. Is this BS? Implied. A1. No, it's all mostly true. I admit to some embellishment for dramatic comedic effect though. The bit about the leather pants is representative, not an actual quote. Not from sexy times anyway. She probably mentioned it at some point though. Q2. Why didn't you run away screaming before you got married? Sub-question. Was OP's wife hot? A2. Yes, she is hot, and funny, and vivacious. Also, I really was a Nordic silent bear. Thanks, you/Sarah_Dragonfire, my wife drew me out of my shell. And if I'm brutally honest with myself, when you're young and getting laid on the regular, a lot of things don't seem all that terrible. Damn you penis, this is all your fault. Q3. Did your kid really develop a stutter because of this? A3. Medically speaking, I cannot state this with 100% certainty. The cause was never formally diagnosed. However, I watched it happen firsthand. I'm not a qualified speech therapist, but I think it was a reasonable conclusion to draw based on the observations I made. I'd welcome a dissenting opinion from an actual professional though, if only to salve my conscience. Which leads to, Q4. Aren't you really the one responsible for your kid's stutter? After all, you did nothing to stop it. A4. Guilty. And I feel utterly like shit about it all the time. For the record, I did bring it up lots of times, even to the point of getting into arguments about it and speaking harshly to my wife when she interrupted my son. But I think by the time I realized it was happening, most of the damage was done. And anything I could do was more expressing my anger about it than actually making an effective change. All the rest of this weirdly long post is just ranting. If there's an actual justification for leaving, this is it, and I'm deathly afraid that she'll get full custody and just make it worse or even irreparable. Q5. Is it because she's, pick one, OCD, insecure, autistic, mentally ill? A5. I don't think so, although I've always sensed an overwhelming need for attention. I see it in her family dynamic, in that all of her many siblings were in constant competition for their parents' attention and affection. Q6. Have you tried counseling? A6. No, probably should have, but I know her well enough that even mentioning it would shatter her. It's bizarre that I can't bring myself to do a lot of things people have suggested, and believe me, I've probably thought of all of them, because they just seem too cruel to me. And yet, I'm seriously considering divorce. I realize the contradiction there. I feel unsafe because my autistic neighbor exhibits strange behavior. He constantly follows me when I take my dog outside at night. Hi all. I've never posted here before, but I've been thinking about writing this for a while now, since I'm really starting to feel uncomfortable and could really use some advice for who to contact and what to do. I 23F live in student housing as a graduate student. I have my own apartment in a small multifamily complex. There are about 4 other students there, one of which I will refer to as S, 45M. S has autism. I know these terms are outdated, but for context, his autism is rather profound, and he has lots of social difficulties and stims in conversation. I previously haven't had any real difficulties interacting with him, especially since I used to be an instructor for children with autism and am used to handling various social behaviors from people on the spectrum. But in the past couple of months, his behavior towards me has changed, and I'm at a loss for what to do. I take my dog out at various times throughout the night to relieve herself. There is only one way out of the complex, and I have to pass by S's apartment in order to do this. But after living here for about 6 months, I didn't have any trouble with this. Sometimes, he'd come out to say hi, and I'd let him pet my dog. But this was always at an appropriate time. About a month and a half ago, things started to get weird when I took my dog out at 4:30 a.m., which isn't unusual, and saw him peeking at me through the window. He then opened the door and came outside to sit down and pet my dog. She started barking and I politely told him that I can't have her barking at this time of night and took her inside. I'll admit I felt a bit uncomfortable with him coming out so late at night. After all, he is a large older man and I'm a very small female. For the next month, I would notice S lingering outside the apartments a lot more often. I found it disconcerting when he was doing this late at night. My partner, 20F, came to visit for a month, and while she was there, his behavior got even stranger. Nearly every time I took my dog outside, he would open his door and come out to talk to me, which made me uncomfortable because it seemed he was actively watching for me. But when I asked my partner to come out with me, he would open the door, see her with me, and then close the door without a word. It got to the point where I no longer wanted to take my dog out alone and eventually put up a security camera for peace of mind. The day my security package was actually delivered, my partner was up having a school Zoom meeting in my kitchen, while I slept. Apparently, during the meeting, she started to hear him yell my name outside my door, followed by, "Package." And she ignored it, but it went on for several minutes. This made me really nervous to hear about, and after I put the camera up the behavior slowed. But the other day, my partner went back to her home state again, and S's behavior changed again. He came up to me on the way back from doing laundry in our shared laundry room and asked me if I was a lesbian. I was kind of taken aback, but figured since he has autism, he doesn't really understand if a question is inappropriate. But 2 days later, it got worse. I was taking my garbage out, and there's a small alley between our apartments and the dumpsters. There is only one way in or out. It was nearly midnight and I checked the cameras first to ensure I was alone before going out, but when I turned around, he was standing in the alley, nearly blocking my way out. He looked on the verge of tears. I awkwardly said hi and stepped around him so I wouldn't be cornered in the alley, and he started confessing a variety of emotional and family problems to me. I could see he was having a hard time, so I was polite and answered him and advised him to see a therapist if he needed someone to talk to. He then said something odd to me about not having a partner and how he wanted one really badly, not to put me on the spot, and mentioned he knew about my current partner. Of course, now I think I see why he's been acting so strange towards me. Here's the thing though. He's still following me outside when I take my dog out, and sometimes will just stand there quietly and watch if I'm not engaging with the conversations he's trying to start. I have started carrying pepper spray and will admit I'm feeling very concerned for my safety. My mom says it's a harmless crush and I should just politely tell him to stop cornering me, but I don't know how to safely have this conversation, just in case I may actually be in danger, and I don't feel comfortable doing so. Any advice on what I should tell him to make him understand his behavior is making me feel unsafe. Should I even tell him? Even though he has autism, I feel like he should know not to corner me in an alley at midnight. My school does not have many people working during the summer, and I'm not sure who I should report this to, if I do. Several people close to me who have met him, including someone who is also on the autism spectrum, are telling me to not confront him and just report this behavior. But again, my parents just say his autism is making it difficult to understand that his sudden change in behavior is off-putting, and he's getting over a harmless crush. Either way, I feel unsafe at times, and I want to hear some advice from you guys as to what I should do. Advice from anyone on the spectrum would be especially appreciated, since I want to know if maybe I'm just misinterpreting his challenged social skills as something more concerning. Thank you so much. Update. Thank you all for the replies. You guys are so helpful and have helped me realize the danger I'm in. I want to believe this is the best case scenario, where he just doesn't realize his behavior is inappropriate. Logically, this is the most likely case, but I have to base my actions around a worst case scenario. My gut says something is very wrong. You guys are right that I need to listen to that. My safety has to take priority over his feelings, and I will be doing everything I can to avoid interactions with him. This weekend, he hasn't come up to me directly. He has, however, been coming outside at night after 2:30 a.m., searching the yard where I usually take my dog, and then going straight back inside, 2 nights in a row now, as caught multiple times by my camera. Don't know why else he would do this other than to look for me, and this makes me especially unnerved that he's only attempting that approach at night now, as if he's trying to catch me off guard. I called my parents and broke down crying after reading all the comments you guys left in this thread, and they're finally taking me seriously. My mom purchased me a stun gun, which I will not be going outside without. I'm also not leaving the house alone anymore at all, not even to take the trash out. My dog will be accompanying me for everything. I didn't mention it in my previous post, but my dog is a pit bull, and even though she's the sweetest and has never once been aggressive, she is fiercely loyal, and I believe she could do some serious damage if someone attacked me. I also put in contact alarms for my windows and got a better deadbolt for my door, and my partner has also offered to come stay with me to help keep me safe. He has never approached me when I'm not alone. So for everyone who's been concerned for my safety, thank you, and I hope that shows I'm taking serious steps to keep safe. This morning, I submitted a report to the school and explained the situation in depth, including sending them footage from my security camera of him following me and my dog outside late at night. I requested they keep my report anonymous. I asked them to do a mental welfare check on him and connect him with counseling resources, and as some of you have suggested, I'm asking them to call and remind him not to approach people late at night while they're on their own. Those were my only specific requests, but I told them I need intervention, and I need it now. I got a call back within a few hours and learned my case was fortunately assigned to a man who's worked with autistic adults for years prior to transferring to work at the university, so he's very understanding of the situation and why it's so complex, and will be working on connecting us with resources for his mental health and to point out which behaviors are appropriate, inappropriate. I'm hoping this is the best case scenario, and that this intervention will be positive. If it's not, however, then I will be asking the housing department to temporarily move me. I feel much better with the help and communication I'm getting from the school, but I will continue to treat this like I'm in very real danger, because I might be. This post blew up, so I will update it if something more substantial happens. But for now, the situation is reported and you can assume no news is good news. I slapped my mother-in-law. My husband scolded me and told me that I am not allowed to do that to his mother. She and he are both racists. Hi Reddit. I made this throwaway because I need some help to know if I should apologize to my husband because yesterday I slapped my mother-in-law in front of him. For context, my husband is white and I am mixed. My mom is Puerto Rican and my dad is white. My mom has very dark skin and my dad is pretty fair. I'm pretty white passing, which for those who don't know, means you can't really tell that I'm Latina unless I tell you. A running for mother-in-law joke is that melanin skips a generation because my maternal grandpa is also very fair but my maternal great-grandma is very brown. With that out of the way, I'll get into my situation. I have been with my husband for 7 years, married for 5. We have a 3-year-old little girl who is the light of my life. When she was born, she had a head full of dark brown curls, dark brown eyes and a fairly olive complexion. She looks like me when I get tan. You can definitely tell she's part Latino. Despite knowing all this, my mother-in-law has gotten it into her head that my daughter isn't my husband. She's been telling anyone who will listen that I must have had an affair because there's no way her son's child could be that color. Yeah, how nice. My mother-in-law has always been standoffish with me. She never made a big effort to get to know me and was always more polite than anything else. Mother-in-law has made some offhanded comments before about Latinos, but husband would brush them off because she's from another time. I wanted to write off her behavior as just her not being educated enough. I realize now that was my mistake because it gave her the okay to keep going. When my husband and I heard from my sister-in-law that mother-in-law was saying this, we invited her over to talk about this. I was really hoping we'd be able to fix this. However, what happened was my mother-in-law going on a rant for like 15 minutes. It consisted of her outing herself as a racist. Saying she knew girls like me couldn't control themselves, that she knew from the start what would happen. The nerve I had to pass my daughter off as her, also some very colorful slurs. Husband and I were frozen in shock because she hadn't even stepped into the house and was just screeching on our doorstep. What snapped me out of it was when she started to insult my mom, saying she probably did the same to my dad. I don't know what came over me next. I've never hit someone before. But I ended up smacking her so hard her glasses fell off. That's what got my husband to start talking. Or rather yelling at his mother and me for acting this way while mother-in-law started to wail. Yes, I shouldn't have hit her, I know. That's wrong. But hearing him imply I was in the wrong the same way mother-in-law made me more angry. I told him he's just as much a racist as his mom if he was trying to make me out to be as bad as her. I got my keys from inside the house while he was trying to calm his mom down and left. I drove to a hotel and spent the night there. Now it's the afternoon and I haven't left the hotel room since checking in. Husband and several other friends and Faye mother-in-law have been trying to reach me. I only replied to my sister-in-law to tell her I'm safe at a hotel and asked her to not tell my husband what hotel I'm at. Guilt is starting to sink in and I'm questioning everything. Like, did I allow my mother-in-law to do this? Did I showcase behavior that made her think I was cheating? Does my husband think I cheated and that's why mother-in-law has this in her head? And of course, should I be apologizing to my husband for hitting my mother-in-law? I know violence is wrong and I hate making excuses, but I just couldn't handle someone talking about my mother-in-law that way. So Redditors, should I be apologizing to my husband? How do we get through this? Any and all advice is appreciated. Edit, no. My daughter was not at the house. We sent her to have a weekend sleepover with my sister's mother-in-law. I'll be picking her up tomorrow afternoon. Edit 2, I have posted an update you can find on my page. Relevant comments. Constant Pen 4742. I would be scared to raise my daughter with that mother-in-law. I would do paternity just to shut down any ideas with the husband, but your marriage just took a hit and if he doesn't step up, it would be difficult to move on. OP answer, this is what I'm most afraid of. She's a kind of matriarch, so if we were to go NC, it would be with the rest of the Faye mother-in-law too. However, I don't want my daughter in the range of an environment where she can be subjected to passing and direct comments. I don't want her to grow up thinking she's less because of her heritage. Update 1, thank you to everyone who gave very insightful advice. I spent quite a bit reflecting and was able to get an emergency meeting with my therapist this morning. I only have my sister here as my parents moved back to Puerto Rico to be with my grandparents 5 years ago. Some questions I want to answer real quick. How old are we? My husband is 28 and I just celebrated my 30th birthday. We met when he was 21 and I was 23. Where was my daughter? I sent her to my sister's on Friday for a weekend sleepover with my sister's mother-in-law. I picked her up Monday afternoon and we had a little mommy-daughter time going to her favorite place, Costco. Yes, my 3-year-old loves Costco. We got home around 7 after we had dinner. My husband was waiting and I told him we'd talk after kiddo went to bed. When she was for certain asleep, we sat and had a long conversation not just about the fight and his mother, but also race and culture. I saw how my Faye mother-in-law was treated based on skin color, and while my husband understands racism, he admitted to never really grasping the complexities, especially colorism. A lot of you jumped to me taking my daughter and leaving or telling me he'd leave me. Sorry to disappoint, but no, we're not getting a divorce or anything of the sort. He apologized to me for not standing up for me before and then, acknowledging he didn't want to think of his mother in a racist light. I also apologized for hitting her because in the end, no, it doesn't help us. He did forgive me and said if it wasn't his mom saying it, he'd probably slap them too. We will be going to a marriage counselor, we decided, hoping to find one that specializes in interracial marriage. Our daughter is going to face challenges in the future because of her race. It's sad to say, but unfortunately racism is still alive and we want to know how to protect her and uplift her so she does not feel ashamed of her heritage. We've made the decision to go no contact with her and any people who try to bridge communication between us and her. She will have no contact with my daughter unless it's years down the road and she shows significant changes in her behavior. My husband will be driving to her house tomorrow to inform her of our decision. I'd consider a paternity test and DNA test, but only if mother-in-law pays. I don't want to entertain this on my own dime. We've also decided to not make any public posts regarding this. If people want to believe her story, that is on them, not us. My husband knows our baby is his. The irony is she looks more like him than me. Her curls are even from him. I do hope this is my last update. If anything else happens, I might come back. Thank you again to everyone who gave valuable advice. I am sad my daughter won't have a grandmother in the States, but it's more reason for us to plan trips to PR. Relevant comments. Icy_spinach_48. You dealt with this very well. People on here are too quick to suggest divorce over every problem they read about. Well done to both of you for tackling it maturely. I wish you both the very best for the future update. Hello everyone. I think I jinxed myself by saying in my first update, I hope this will be my last post, because unfortunately, for a lack of a better term, shit continues to hit the fan. For those of you saying I should be arrested for slapping my mother-in-law, I hate to disappoint, but she is not pressing charges. This is all thanks to my husband who said he'd expose my father-in-law's various affairs. Yes, it turns out that my father-in-law cheated numerous times on my mother-in-law until his death 2 years ago. According to hubby, he was paying for jewel favors even on his deathbed. This is deeply disturbing because father-in-law and mother-in-law appeared to have a loving marriage. Apparently, that was just for show. I can't even begin to imagine how hubby is feeling. We talked about it and he said it's something he felt deep shame for keeping from me, but also shame because his parents' marriage wasn't at all what they pretended it was. Husband and I are still looking for a couples therapist who specializes in interracial marriage. Husband is also looking for a therapist of his own after the conversation with mother-in-law opened his eyes to a lot of other traumas and issues he feels haven't been properly worked through. I'm so proud of him for taking these steps. Now on to how the conversation on Wednesday went, which is of course why I made this update to continue to vent. As I said in my first update, husband went over to mother-in-law's house to inform her that her behavior is unacceptable and will be going no contact for the foreseeable future. Mother-in-law didn't take this well. The irony is that she told husband that he couldn't keep her from her only grandchild. Funny because she spent the week claiming our daughter wasn't his. She threw some colorful insults at me, claiming he was never like this before he met me and that this was all my idea to hide my apparent affair. In response, husband said if she's so certain that I'm cheating and that our daughter isn't his, she can pay for a paternity test and a PI to find my affair partner. You know, an affair partner that doesn't exist. Husband says mother-in-law's face turned a comical shade of red and he swears there was steam coming from her ears. This is when mother-in-law said she'd press charges and husband said he'd just tell everyone about father-in-law's serial cheating. Mother-in-law apparently burst into tears then, got down on her knees, wailing he couldn't leave her. Hubby just pushed her off and left. I had already blocked her number so she couldn't contact me, but she blew up husband's phone till he came home and he blocked her. Husband is going to be sending her an email, reiterating what he said about NC, and until she proves she's gotten help, understands she was wrong, and apologizes, she won't be seeing any of us. Both of my husband's sisters called us to get the scope of the problem and agreed to set the record straight with anyone who tries to get a hold of us for mother-in-law or tries to echo her conspiracy theories. Anyone who wants to back her up can crowdfund for a paternity test and private investigator. We've spent too long building up our finances to waste them on the ravings of a mad woman. Husband and I did read comments on the posts. I did tell him about it and show him, and we both thank you for the support and helpful comments. Husband has a special message for those doubting me and saying I should get arrested, get fucked incel. I love this man so much and I'm so lucky to call him my husband and the father of my little girl. We'll be celebrating mother-in-law being out of our lives by taking our daughter out to Texas Roadhouse, eating an ungodly amount of rolls, and seeing Despicable Me 4. Wishing everyone love and thank you again for all the support. Edit. I forgot to add this too, but she also threatened grandparents' rights on the grounds that I endangered my daughter by taking the medication I use for my autoimmune disease during pregnancy. We doubt she'll actually go forward with that, but we will consult a lawyer regardless. Relevant comments. Do Coffee 6106. It sounds like you and your husband have been through an incredibly challenging and emotional time. It's great to hear that you're both taking steps to address the situation with professional help and that you have a support system in place. OP answer, thank you. I feel equally blessed that his two sisters support our decision to go NC and won't be trying to defend or speak on mother-in-law's behalf. Snoowords 4839. Look up emotional incest. Mother-in-law needs therapy to stop trying to make your husband take the place of father-in-law. Start that fuck you binder. She may call Child Protective Services and tons of other problems. Make sure she isn't on any pickup list for your child. Most states, grandparent rights go nowhere when both parents are married. Cameras and documents. OP answer, thank you for saying the pickup list for daycare. Even though she's never picked her up before, I'm realizing that's a scenario and will be letting her daycare know. Gwynison. This is what I'm most afraid of. She's a kind of matriarch. So if we were to go NC, it would be with the rest of the family too. I'm glad OP and her husband appear to have decided this doesn't matter, because it doesn't. The mother-in-law only remains the matriarch who can dictate what the rest of the family do, cut off OP and husband over their no contact, if they agree with and allow her to do so. And as it seems so far, his own siblings are not going to do that. If they did, well then they're just awful racists like the mother-in-law, or at best enablers of it. So no big loss if they choose to ban them from the family, right? I asked my friend to be friend with benefits and now she won't talk to me. I'm worried I ruined our friendship and don't know how to fix this. I met this girl 2 years ago as my lab partner for one of my classes. We became friends, eating dinner together after class and studying together. We've continued to take the same classes, but I don't see her as often one-on-one because we joined an informal study group with other people from our class. Recently, she's been more open than usual, getting closer to me when we're working on a problem together and being more chatty, flirty. She and I are both single and have been for a while. I thought that she was interested in me and I decided to take a shot in the dark. I pulled her aside after a study session last week, and once everyone else had left I brought up how we're both single and asked if she wanted to be friends with benefits. She asked what I meant and I said that we could hook up sometimes and otherwise keep things the same and still be friends. She said that she really isn't interested in that and that she doesn't see me that way. I just said, "Oh, okay, see you tomorrow then," and left. I'm hurt that I got rejected, but at the time I was still glad that I'd been brave enough to go through with it. I knew it was going to be awkward with her for a few days, but it's been a lot worse than that. At the study sessions she sits at the other side of the table from where she used to. She only works with other people in the group and doesn't even glance at me except if I directly ask her a question. Yesterday, I tried to walk alongside her as she left the study session and said, "Hey, I haven't seen you in a while, how's it going?" She said that she didn't want to talk and that she feels weird about me. I left her alone after that, but I'm crushed. I understand why she's mad at me and I know it's all my fault. I was incredibly stupid and I don't know if I can undo what I did. I thought if she said no she would just tease me a little and leave it at that, but I understand that what I said really hurt her. Is there any way I can get her to be friends with me again? Should I apologize, and if so, how should I word it? I really don't want to lose her as a friend. Too long, didn't read. I asked a friend if she wanted to be friends with benefits and now things are awkward between us. I don't think she even wants to still be friends. Commenters tell OP that he massively fucked up the girl by approaching her the way he did. He could have had a chance if he asked her out on a date first instead of straight up asking her to have sex with him. They tell OP that the girl probably feels like he just sees her as a sexual object instead of actually as a friend. OP says, "I understand that's how I came across, but that's not what I feel. I value her as a friend independent of how I see her sexually. What can I say so that she knows I still like her as a person?" Commenters tell OP that it's too late and she sees him in a completely different light now. Update. So I took the advice in the original post and didn't say anything further to her. Last night she sent me a text telling me she doesn't think she can be friends with me anymore. She said that what I did made her very uncomfortable and that she's not attracted to me and doesn't know what made me ask her that. She told me to leave her alone and to not talk to her at the study sessions. I didn't reply to that and I'm not going to today's study session. I feel ashamed and embarrassed at what I did, but I'm also very hurt that this happened. I'm upset that she's throwing away our friendship over this even though I know I shouldn't have asked her that. I also think she's been telling other people what happened. In my first class this morning this random girl who sits near me said, "Did you really ask, friend's name, to hook up with you?" I asked where she heard that and she just told me to stay away from, friend's name. I'm afraid of how many other people she might have told, which is partly why I don't want to go to the study session today in case she's told them. I also got a text later from an unrecognized number saying you're a creep. I blocked that number but I'm feeling very uneasy. This situation has been stressful for both of us, so I don't know why she's making it worse by telling people about it. We've both suffered enough already and would be better off if we just move on. I'm still devastated at losing her as a friend and at being rejected, so I just want to lick my wounds and slowly get over it. To be clear, I accept that I've lost her as a friend and that this was my fault for being so stupid. But I feel that she's gone too far by airing our dirty laundry when this should really be kept as a private matter between us. I'm also worried that I won't have a chance with other girls at our college if they hear about this. Is there anything I should do about the story spreading, and if so, what do I do? Should I say anything to her? There's a lot of things happening at once and I'm confused as to what I should do. Commenters keep asking why OP approached the girl the way he did and why not just ask her on a date. OP says, "I thought for the last month or so that she was into me and I was pretty sure of it, so that's why I was so forward." That's no excuse for my behavior, but that's what was going through my head. I didn't want to date her, at least at first, so I didn't think about asking for a date. That would have been the better move, but she would have shot me down anyways, so I guess it doesn't matter. And, I've always thought that date equals sign relationship. No, it's never worked before, but she was my only female friend, so it's not like I would try that on some random girl. Commenters ask why OP wouldn't want a relationship. OP says, "I might have wanted that eventually, but I wanted to test out how well we'd work together as friends with benefits first. I'm not really a relationship type of guy, so I can't just jump into that out of nowhere. I didn't want to be tied to someone immediately like that. And, I haven't had a relationship, but I wouldn't be able to hook up with other girls if I was in one, and it's too serious for me to just jump into that. OP feels that he should face no repercussions and whines, but I don't understand what she gains from telling people about it. I'm going to be a better person and not do this again, but it isn't going to help if everybody knows what I did. I won't say anything to her, but I wish she would just let it go. Commenters tell OP he deserves the reactions he is getting from the wider friend circle and that the girl is warning other girls of his behavior and general creepiness. OP states, "I feel awful that I made her feel bad, but given my situation, all I can think about right now is how to get through this. I wanted to test the waters and maybe go from friend with benefits into a relationship if it went well. I was an idiot for thinking that, but that's what my thoughts were at the time. She won't talk to me anymore, but I empathize with how she's feeling and wish I had never said that to her. But why is it wrong to be concerned about my chances with other girls? I'm genuinely trying to learn from this, and I understand everything you've said except this part. It seems like a natural thing to be worried about, but I understand I have to learn from this and change myself to be better." And keeps trying to be the victim. I would just from her reaction alone. I don't think it's okay for other people to hear about a private matter, but I understand why she's doing it. Since OP keeps insisting the girl telling other girls about his actions is ruining his chances with these other girls, some commenters are confident that OP has never had any experience with other women before. OP confirms, "I haven't had sex, but I took a girl to prom in high school." After so many commenters telling OP how and where he went wrong, OP still makes the whole thing about himself and still doesn't get it. OP says, "Yes, I know that, but she could have kept my name anonymous and still gotten support by explaining the situation to her friends. That's not what happened, and I know I deserve it, but I still don't like having random people confronting me about this." Relevant comments Muad_Dib, "I'm willing to bet money he watches some form of pickup artist, men's rights arsehole online who convinced him that he should be betting women left, right and center because only betas want a relationship or some shite like that. Because that is the only way I can wrap my head around a guy who is still a virgin thinking it's somehow a solid plan to open with that offer, and then get mad that she tells other women in the group about him so his genius plan can't work on them either. Literally nothing else should be giving him the impression that you seek out friend with benefits deals as openers with women, let alone women you're in class with. Ashy Pink. He said she was his only female friend, which makes me think you're exactly right. OP reads normal friendliness from women as flirting or sexual interest. A lot of men do this, unfortunately. He also seems to feel entitled to having his mistakes hidden by the person who he inflicted them upon. A classic recipe for a nice guy. Linerva, this. I read the whole thing when it happened. He's a virgin with no dating experience at all, but he values the idea of fucking around with tons of girls more than getting to know a girl he likes, who likes him. Even though it's clearly never actually going to happen. Not with his people skills and lack of sexual experience. He has this mistaken idea that it's easy to have a harem of girls ready to fuck you. And that getting to know one person at a time and dating casually for a while would detract from your life. He thought that even going on a few lunch dates is inherently more serious than proposing a friend with benefits situation. Presumably because he assumes friend with benefits get to see other people, though in reality most people who are FWB are either exclusive or agree to talk before they sleep with others, for health reasons. He just is not at all ready to date, or even have sex with women because his ideas about sex, dating and relationships are completely wrong. Mom and stepdad asks me to have sex with the stepdad. She is a piece of crap for allowing and enabling such behavior. My mom had me at 18 right out of high school. Long story short, my dad died at 19 while he was away at uni. Then my mom remarried at 21 and had my sisters. My stepdad, we'll call him Scott, was the only father I've known. He's been a great father, nothing out of the ordinary. Absolutely perfect parenting until I turned about 19. I remember Scott was becoming a little more touchy than normal, and a little too personal. He would offer me wine, I declined, and would ask me about my sex life after one too many glasses. I brushed it off because I thought maybe he was being a nosy father and just wanted to make sure his daughter wasn't having sex. Then this kind of stuff continued, to the point where my stepdad tried to kiss me last year. I told my mom and she just laughed and told me, that's how he gets after too many drinks. I knew then I had to make plans to leave, so I started saving up. After that incident things died down a bit until my mom got pregnant at 39. It's a higher risk pregnancy so she's on a lot of bed rest, and taking extra care of herself per her doctor. A couple of weeks ago, my mom and Scott sat me down and told me her doctor said she should avoid sex during her pregnancy due to various health reasons I won't get into. They asked me if I could have sex with Scott just until she was able to have sex again. Of course, I said no. I was livid, I was crying. She told me she'd be okay with it, and she'd be in the room as well. I told her that was even worse. Like, what are they thinking? I have enough money now for an apartment. I got approved. I'm signing my lease next week. My parents are ignoring me and the whole house is full of tension. My younger sisters don't understand what's going on and my mom told me not to say anything. But my sisters are smart, they know something is really up and won't stop asking me about it, especially the oldest. She came to me crying today and told me I better tell her what's going on right now. I didn't say anything. So any advice? What do I tell her? What do I say to the younger ones? How do I tell a 16-year-old about this without being inappropriate or bashing my parents? Response to OP: bashing your parents would be unfairly putting them down for something benign. What they've done is wrong and sick on so many levels. Forget about not wanting to be inappropriate because it's more important to prevent you and them from dealing with more abuse. It is highly likely that your other sisters will be subjected to this if they have not already, and they are younger and more easily victimized. You could speak to your teen sisters privately and ask them if they have had any uncomfortable experiences with your stepdad. Like him talking too much about sex or making advances, and make it clear that you are a safe person to confide in. I would also reach out to a trusted family member or someone you can ask for help from. OP: last year when he tried to kiss me, Child Protective Services interviewed all the girls, and the girls were very confused because their dad has never said or done anything to them inappropriately. My aunt, who is a child therapist and called Child Protective Services to begin with, talked to each girl and said there were no signs of foul play, which upset her because she really hates Scott, but made her happy because he's done nothing to them. Child Protective Services said it was like a roommate complaining about sexual assault since I'm not his biological daughter. My aunt has been fighting to make my mom leave for years, but since Scott is not abusive to her or the girls, and makes a lot of money, she won't leave. But my aunt has actually mentioned he's been manipulating her with kindnesses all these years so she would be okay with him having sex with me when I became an adult, and it worked. My aunt and I don't think he's going to hurt the other girls, but you never know. We most likely will call child services again. OP: my aunt and I are probably going to call again and try to get the girls out and with her, or my grandparents who want them to stay there. My concern is telling the girls. I would be devastated if I was 16 and someone told me my dad tried to have sex with my sister, so now I have to live with my grandparents. So what do I say to her? Do I break her heart? Response to OP: yes. You need to break her heart so that she will not be groomed into a sexual relationship with him. Then you can encourage her to get therapy. Another response: do I break her heart? You will never be the one to break her heart in this situation. It's your mom and stepdad who are breaking her heart. You're just the one who has to tell her. None of this is your fault. You are not responsible for the trauma inflicted on anybody here. Much easier said than felt, I know, but I can't articulate how strongly I believe this. Their trauma will involve you, but it will never be because of you. You're a good sister. A really, really amazing sister. Update: the original post is above. Too long. Didn't read? Basically, my mom and stepdad asked me to have sex with my stepdad. I declined, freaked out, and am now leaving. My concern is for my sisters. My aunt did what she said she was going to do. She barged in with 3 other people, one of them a social worker friend of hers, who was off duty, and my uncle. None of them are allowed at the house, so as soon as Scott found out they were there, he called the police. Before the police even showed up, I told my 16-year-old sister and the 14-year-olds what happened. The 16-year-old got angry at her dad. She was walking around the house ranting at her dad and crying. Eventually she decided to come with my aunt and I, and then we would figure out where she could go from then on. However, the 2 14-year-olds did not believe me. They actually started laughing. Then they got angry and told me I was trying to destroy our family and how could you make up a sick lie. It got to the point where they threw my and my 16-year sister's stuff out the window. By that time the cops came and told my aunt, uncle, and the social worker they had to leave the property. The social worker friend let the cops know everything that's been going on. The cops didn't care, they just cared about the noise and the trespassers. So I, my 16-year-old sister, my aunt and uncle and their friend left. Very soon after, my grandparents came and got the other 3 girls, after the 14-year-olds called them and came to their senses. I found out from my grandma that one of the 14-year-olds confronted her dad and he didn't deny anything. In fact, he called me a whore and said I should have had any problems doing what he asked. That's when they packed a bag and called my grandparents. My grandparents explained everything separately to the little one. She told my grandpa she prefers him to our dad because grandpa doesn't yell at her. As much as that pained me, I hope it's enough to keep the girls at my grandparents for good. My 16-year-old sister is going to emancipate herself and stay with either our grandparents or our aunt. Child Protective Services was called, but it was my grandparents this time. I have multiple screenshots on my and my aunt's phone of my mother incriminating herself, so we will be able to file charges and hopefully get Scott on the sex offender registry. That way the girls can stay with their grandparents permanently. Thank you all for the support. I appreciate each and every one of your comments, and to the survivors who shared their stories, you're all so strong, thank you. OP on why aunt wasn't allowed over. Because they hate Scott and know he's a creep. Many years ago when I was about 13, at my younger sister's gender reveal party. My cousin, my uncle's daughter, who is trans, decided at university that she was female and came back as female. We all accepted and loved her the same except Scott, who got drunk and lifted her skirt and said, "Do you still have your boy parts?" That's when my uncle beat the shit out of him and knocked over a couple of tables. From then on half of my family wasn't allowed back at the house per a trespassing order. They knew then that he was an absolute perv. But I, as a young child, didn't fully comprehend it. Good comment, the cops didn't care. Why is this always their fucking default setting? Am I the A to ask my husband to block his female friend who warned him not to marry me? She has no right to interfere in our wedding. I, 26 female, want my husband, 27 male, to immediately block one of his friends Kyla, 27 female. He thinks I am overreacting, and wants opinions from some cool-headed people on if I'm just acting crazy, or this is something that would cross the line for you. My husband has a group of 8 friends he has been close with since his college days. Kyla is one of his friends. When my husband and I started dating, he introduced me to all of them, and everyone was very friendly. I used to hang out with them frequently. I am an introvert, and so is my husband. I would always ask him to spend time alone as being in social settings just saps all my energy away. His friends, and especially Kyla, always made it a point to tell me how he hangs out with them less after he started dating me. Kyla also had a weird energy around me. If I was with my husband, she would be the friendliest with me. However, as soon as he walked away she acted like I did not exist. My husband hates to be touched by others, we both are neurodivergent, but Kyla would always tease him by trying to hug him, mess his hair, etc. I never felt she was flirting with him, but just teasing him to make him annoyed. Overall, she just feels like a person who has a severe social boundary issue. We got married 2 years ago, and things have been great between us. Last week, we had our second marriage anniversary and invited a bunch of people. His friends stayed back after all the guests left, and we were all drinking and chatting. One of his friends, Jen, became a bit tipsy and started complimenting me on how beautiful our house is, how I care for my husband, and how he has changed for the better since marriage. Everyone was laughing at my husband at how much of a slob he was when he was single. Jen then pointed at Kyla and said, "You better pay up 'cause you had bet that their marriage would not even last for 2 years. Everyone became silent and started changing the topic. I also did not want to spoil the mood, and let it go, but it stuck in my head. After everyone left, I asked my husband what Jen was talking about. He also had noticed Jen saying that and was ready with a full explanation. He told me the story of what happened when we got engaged. When he proposed to me, he had not told his friends that he was going to do that. We went on a trip to Puerto Rico, and he surprised me there. We put our engagement pictures on Instagram while we were on the trip, and it was a big surprise to everyone as we were only dating for 1 year. When he came back and met all his friends, everyone congratulated him. However, Kyla started ranting about how he was a fool to propose so quickly, and she felt that I was not the right girl for him. Seems like she said some unkind things about me, implying I was a gold digger. My husband's family is wealthy, but so is mine. She had said that she bet we would break up within 2 years if we got married. That is why Jen was taunting her about how happy my husband was with me. I was very furious at this point, as I feel this is something he should have told me. I asked him to tell me truthfully if he had ever dated Kyla or had any history with her, as he has always told me that he has never dated anyone from his friend group. He said that he has of course not dated or hooked up with Kyla. However, Kyla had asked him out a few times when they were in college, and he always politely declined. I asked why he said no to her, and he said he just does not have any romantic feelings for her. I can see that because my husband does have a type based on me or the other people he has dated in the past, and Kyla is the opposite of that. I am just mad at her for saying bad things about me, especially after knowing that we were already engaged and betting against my marriage. I told my husband that he needs to minimize contact with Kyla and she is not invited to parties at our house anymore. He feels I am being too harsh for something she said almost 3 years ago. He also pointed out that she has been very supportive to both of us, and also helped a lot during our wedding arrangements. He feels she is just blunt and forthright when she speaks, but does not mean those things. He told me to take some time and calm down, and we would revisit this topic in a week. He is worried this will completely change the dynamics within his friend group. Am I the A for wanting him to block her and stop inviting her to our house? Do you think I'm overreacting? I think betting against our marriage and bad-mouthing me behind my back seems like a huge betrayal. I am also mad at my husband that he kept this fact from me, and also never told me that Kyla asked him out during college days. Am I just being crazy and reactive? How would you react in this situation? I don't want to distance my husband from his friends, but I also do not want to see that bitch Kyla's face again. Relevant comments. Commenter. Info. How has Kyla acted since the wedding? Has her behavior changed? You describe a bad behavior in the past tense, so one might believe she's not doing those things anymore. Does she still exhibit boundary issues with your husband? OP. Yes, her behavior with my husband has not changed at all after marriage. However, she is the same with all other friends too. With me, she is fake nice, where she acts like we are best friends in front of my husband, and barely talks to me when he is not around. Commenter. What did he think when you told him that she's totally different when he leaves? OP. He just says she does not know you that well, just ignore her. She has never said anything negative to my face. However, as a girl, you just know when someone does not like you. It's hard to explain to him that it's your feeling and not based on anything she has specifically said or done. Commenter. On blocking her. Especially with the physical contact too. She's so clearly into the husband, and the fact that he's not shutting it down means he likes the extra attention from her. It's one thing to get a friendly hug or maybe an occasional touch on the shoulder from a platonic friend, but shit like playing with his hair. That is 100% flirty behavior. And the fact that he's not shutting it down himself is gross. OP. I have to reply here. So my husband is physically allergic to people touching him. He has a startled response, either he jerks them away or tenses up, when someone hugs him and his face turns red. The weird thing is he can hug his parents or sister and does not get the reaction. He never had that issue with me, even when we first started dating. However, even if my sister or parents hug him, he gets that response. So the fact that he shuts down any touch from Kyla is an understatement. Mini update in comments. Just remembered about my post and logged into the account after many months. Things were really horrible for the last few months and that bitch Kyla almost ruined my life. I don't even know how to describe it. I might write about it next week as I saw a lot of messages asking for an update. I just want other women to be careful of such snakes. Update post. I had posted almost 6 months ago regarding my husband's friend Kyla betting that our marriage would not last for more than 2 years. I was upset and had asked my husband to stop talking to her, because she disrespected our marriage. Since then, Kyla has pulled some really pathetic shit to stir up issues between my husband and I. After I wrote the post, my husband was trying to convince me that Kyla was just joking when she made those comments, and it happened so long ago. Kyla messaged me the next day apologizing for her comments and also not making more efforts to connect with me. I accepted her apology and started warming up to her. She started inviting me for brunches and girls' night out with them, and I felt included in their friend group. One day during brunch, I brought up why Kyla really thought our marriage would not work out. Kyla told me that my husband broke up with his long-term ex-girlfriend Joanna 2 months before he started dating me. I knew that part, but Kyla told me that my husband was really heartbroken after the breakup and swore to her that he would stay away from dating anyone. When he met me, my mom set us up on a blind date. She was surprised how quickly we hit it off. Kyla thought that I was his rebound relationship, but when he proposed to me within a year, she was worried that he was making a very rash decision. My husband's family is rich, and she thought it was unwise for him to marry so quickly without knowing me well. She did not know enough about me and that my family is also very well off. That is why she was concerned that I was taking advantage of his vulnerable state. She apologized to me and said that it was wrong for her to assume that, and over the years, she has seen how happy we are together. I appreciated her honesty, and Kyla and I became good friends since then and started hanging out more frequently. Around 2 months ago, my husband went to a conference in Seattle for 3 nights. After he came back, I got a "Hey girly" message on Instagram from Joanna, his ex. She told me that my husband contacted her a few months ago and they met in Seattle during the conference, and she could give me more proof if I wanted. I went through my husband's Instagram, but he seems to have blocked her. I made a mistake of mentioning it to Kyla, as she was the only person honest to me about Joanna, and she went into detective mode to help me. She was still friends with Joanna on Instagram, as they all went to college together, and opened her profile. The message sent to me was from a different profile, with no followers. We checked her photos, and we saw that she attended the same conference as my husband did in Seattle. Kyla suggested I should ask Joanna for more proof and also ask my husband about the same before assuming the worst. I asked my husband if he met Joanna, and he said yes. He told me he just met her in the expo hall and chatted with her for a few minutes. I asked him why he did not mention it to me, and he told me it was just a quick conversation, and he did not think too much of it. He asked me how I knew it, and I told him that Kyla mentioned that she saw her pictures at the conference, and I thought he might have seen her. I messaged Joanna again to share more proof. She told me that they have been chatting for the past 2 months and plan to attend the conference together. She shared a log of their messages, where my husband was actively flirting with her. The screenshots did look legit, but I did not see any of those messages in my husband's Instagram profile. I talked to Kyla about it, as I did not know what to believe. I messaged Joanna to tell us what happened between them, and she told me that he invited her to the room at nights and they hooked up, but she does not have any photos as he insisted. They do not take any pictures together. I immediately realized it was fake and messaged Joanna to fuck off. She kept on insisting they were telling the truth, and she spent the nights with my husband in his room on all 3 nights. I told her that my husband and I were playing video games, Sea of Thieves, for almost 2-3 hours each night after his dinner, as that is what we do to catch up when he is away. Unless Joanna was sitting behind him watching us play until he fell asleep, she was full of shit. I also told my husband about the whole incident and he told me I should have come to him sooner. He told me that he has gone no contact with Joanna ever since they broke up and he just ran into her at the conference. He told me I could check his phone and everything to verify that he has blocked her everywhere. I told him I do not need to, and Joanna might have run into him and just decided to fuck his life by making up stuff. When all the friends met that weekend, my husband and I told everyone about how Joanna sent messages to me and faked everything. Kyla was also telling what happened as she had told her about it. Kyla accidentally let it slip out that it's luckily, we are nerds and played video games at nights before sleeping, else, props go to Joanna for making up a convincing story. I never told Kyla about the video game stuff. I just told her Joanna is full of shit and I blocked her. It took me until I came home to connect the dots. I told my husband about it and he confronted Kyla. She denied it and told him that I told her about the video game stuff on a phone call, but I don't remember doing it. We have since decided to keep our distance from Kyla. Kyla has called me multiple times to meet up, but I just make up reasons that I'm busy. I do not know why she did it, but at this point, I am not interested in it, and we have decided to just see her on social occasions and avoid hanging out with her as much as possible. I feel stupid that she played me for a fool, and I should have not gone to her when Joanna started messaging me. In hindsight, it seems suspicious that Kyla started telling me about Joanna and at the same time, Joanna claimed to have an affair with my husband. I do not know what her intentions are, but I am mad enough that I will avoid her as much as possible. I wish I had some real proof that she was the one messaging me, so that I could expose her. I also feel bad for suspecting my husband. But I am glad my husband and I are on the same page now. Relevant comments. Commenter, does your husband also believe that Kyla made up a fake Instagram account, pretending to be Joanna? Because that's pretty psycho behavior. OP, yes. He believes me because I told him that I never told Kyla why I thought the account was fake. It's possible she guessed it if I ever mentioned to her that we play video games at night, but it seems suspicious she would guess that was exactly the reason why I realized the account was fake. Commenter, why didn't you try to message her real Insta since you knew the one she used to message you wasn't her main? Why not message her main account? That would have cleared it up pretty quick, I would think. Commenter, why didn't you try to message her real Insta since you knew the one she used to message you wasn't her main? Why not message her main account? That would have cleared it up pretty quick, I would think. OP, her Instagram was private. I did not want to follow her as it would have looked really bad for me to add her, when my husband has blocked her. The only way I could see her Instagram was when Kyla showed it to me on her phone. To another commenter, trust me, I thought about this. Firstly, I will look crazy if I reach out to Joanna, my husband's ex, behind his back. Secondly, even if it was her messaging me, she would just lie and tell me it was not her. I also cannot disregard the fact that I started getting messages a week after my husband ran into her and told her that he was happily married to me. I have to accept that Kyla, if it was her, will get away with the BS. We do not have any proof it was her, and all we could do is distance ourselves from her. Commenter, why did you lie to your husband about the fact that this woman had messaged you in the first place? You are the problem here. OP, agree, I should have told him right away. I tried to be sneaky to know if he really met her at the conference. I was half expecting him to deny it if he was trying to hide something happened. I think I let my insecurity get the worst of me. Lessons learned. Commenter, did he bring a gaming PC or Xbox with him to a work conference? OP, we both use Steam Decks to play games together when he is away. My stepdaughter wants her real dad to give her away, even though he breaks her heart by skipping town and breaking promises he makes to her. My stepdaughter will be getting married on August 3rd. The wedding planning has consumed most of her and her mother's life. I say her mother because we aren't married, though we've lived together for 10 years, for the past 6 months. My stepdaughter graduated last December from university. I paid for her to go to college, though it was a state school, it still ran $40,000. She does not have a job and has been living with us for the duration of her college career and since her graduation. I also bought her a car to get back and forth from school when she finished high school. From time to time her deadbeat father would pop into her life and she would fawn all over him. Although he has not contributed a cent to her education or paid any child support, though that is my girlfriend's fault as CS was not part of the settlement, she still loves him and wants him in her life. He stays long enough to break her heart by skipping town and breaking some promise that he made her. The wedding venue holds 250 people max. I gave them a list of 20 people that I wanted invited, since I was paying for everything. They told me that was no problem and they'd take care of it. So I let these people know they'd be getting an invite, and they should save the date. Saturday, I saw one of my friends on this list at the golf course and asked if he was coming. He told me that he wasn't invited. He told me that he got an announcement, but not an invitation. He had it in his back seat, along with probably 6 months of mail, and showed it to me. Sure enough, it was just an announcement, and my name was nowhere on it. It had her dad's name and her mom's name and not mine. This led to a pretty big fight with my girlfriend, as I found out that none of my list of 20 made the cut for the final guest list because 250 people is very tight. I was pissed, but not a hell of a lot I could do because the important people in my life had already been offended. My girlfriend said, if some people didn't RSVP yes, I might be able to get a couple people in. But that is an ultimate slap in the face in my opinion. So I was boiling on Saturday. Yesterday we had a Sunday dinner with the future in-laws family and us and a surprise guest, the real dad. At this little dinner my stepdaughter announced that her real dad was going to be able to make it to her wedding and that now he'd be able to give her away. This was greeted with a chorus of, "Oh how great and how wonderfuls." I don't think I have ever felt so angry and so disrespected. I was shaking. I took a few seconds to gather my composure because I honestly wasn't sure if I would cry or start throwing punches or both. Once I was sure I'd be able to speak, I got up from my chair and said I'd like to make a toast. I can't remember exactly what I said, but the gist of it was this. I'd like to make a toast. The sound of spoons against glasses rings in my ears. It has been my great pleasure to be a part of this family for the past 10 years. Ah, how sweet. At this point in my life I feel I owe a debt of gratitude to the bride and groom, because they have opened my eyes to something very important. Confident smiles exchanged. They have shown me that my position in this family is not what I once thought it was. And now a glimmer of confusion and shock begins to spread on the faces in the room. Though I once thought of myself as the patriarch or godfather of the family, commanding great respect and sought out help in times of need, it seems instead that I hold the position of an ATM, good for a stream of money, but not much else. As I have been replaced as host, both on the invitations and in the ceremony, I am resigning my financial duties as host to my successor, real dad. So cheers to the happy couple and the path they have chosen. I finished my drink. You all can let yourselves out. Is this selfish? I'm supposed to shell out 40-50 grand for a wedding that I can't invite anyone to? That I am not a part of? I'm so done with this crap. I'm done with my stepdaughter. I'm done with my girlfriend. I transferred the money out of our joint account last night. She has not had a job since she moved in with me. This morning I called all the vendors I had written checks for deposits to refund my money. At present, it looks like I'll lose around $1,500 for the venue, but the other vendors have been great about refunding. Too long, didn't read. You want your real dad to be on the invitation, to give you away and to sit at the head table. Fine, your real dad can pay for everything too. Update 1. The immediate aftermath was a tantrum and people sitting there mumbling while not actually saying anything to me, but to each other. After much yelling with the GF about me being selfish, I spent the night in my home office and no one knocked on my door, not once. Today's aftermath is kind of depressing for me. GF brought me bride's wedding planner to show me how much work I was ruining. I thumbed through it, found a page in the music section for father-daughter dances. All of the songs were catered to real dad's taste. So I thought they were just being disrespectful, but now I'm feeling like they never really gave a crap at all, especially since the menu included 2 ingredients I'm allergic to. That actually made me laugh. Either way, I'm glad to be done, returned to the planner and asked her when she and the bride could move out. Also, I never promised to pay for the wedding. I offered them the use of my home when they were sure it was going to be small, but other than that, all I've heard is how it's the bride's family that should pay. So, let it be the bride's family then, aka, not me. Final update. Girlfriend and bride are now moved out. They are moving in with the groom. It was very hard not to be petty with some of the belongings they took with them, but it's done and I switched out the locks and now it's time for a brew. I can't believe how popular this story got, but I feel good to be given support by so many. If I find out what happens with the wedding, I will let you know, but I can't guarantee that I will put in the effort to find out. From what I've heard, they are trying to scale things back and get his parents to help out. GF burned bridges when I found out she tried to write herself a check on our joint account the day after the unpleasantness. By then I had already moved money, so I guess I'm a bigger ass than her, but I could feel it coming. That's all. Thanks. Am I the A for keeping the truth from my wife? Our baby's death was my fault, and I couldn't bear to tell her the devastating reality. I, male 25, and my wife, female 24, had our daughter Angela last year in November. We met at university. We dated for 2 years and got married after graduating. It's our first marriage and we are very in love. My wife, who we will call Kim, got pregnant during our honeymoon and we were both very excited. My parents are out of the picture and Kim only grew up with her dad. We both knew that we wanted to have children and give them the best life we could. Kim's pregnancy was normal. It was our first child. The baby was born healthy and beautiful. She had perfect chubby legs and round face. I never thought that one day I could love a woman more than I love Kim, but my daughter stole my heart completely. Everything was perfect, but we were very nervous. Since we didn't know anything about babies, Kim's father constantly called us and also gave me advice. My grandmother also taught us how to change her correctly and feed her. We were blessed with a lot of help. Kim's family came from their home country to meet our daughter for Christmas. They were going to stay until the new year, but on December 28, Kim's father had a heart attack and was taken to the emergency room. We went to the hospital and my father-in-law had to remain under observation since his condition was serious. To give you an idea, he might not wake up again. I told my wife that I would stay with her, but Kim asked me to go with Angela home. Whatever had to happen, would happen in the next 24 hours. She didn't want to leave her father's side, but she didn't want to leave the baby at the hospital all night. We agreed that I would stay at home with Angela and she would stay at home with her father and her relatives at the hospital. The next 24 hours passed and my father-in-law began to improve, so the stay was extended to 48 hours, and for 72. Kim came to get some clothes and see our daughter and she returned to the hospital. Due to her concern, I had not slept in those 2 days, so after giving her bottle to my daughter I put her to sleep and I myself fell asleep. When I woke up it was almost night. Angela was still asleep, so I decided to have a coffee and watch television. After 2 hours I decided to check on her and she seemed asleep. However, my heart stopped when I realized that she had vomited, and when I picked her up she was cold. And I wasn't breathing. I panicked. I shook her, I patted her on the back, I just desperately wanted her to breathe again. I called an ambulance begging for help. The operator gave me instructions to do CPR. When the doctors arrived we immediately went to the hospital. I called to Kim and between my mess of tears and hyperventilation I tried to tell her what was happening. When we arrived she was already there. Kim cried and screamed at the doctors begging to save her. I did too. They did everything they could for about an hour, but in the end there was nothing to do. My baby died at only a month old. They explained to us that Angela had vomited while she was sleeping and choked on her own vomit. She tried to calm us down by explaining that this can happen and that it wasn't our fault. Kim and I are a mess. I haven't told her that I fell asleep while my daughter was dying. I haven't told her that I killed my daughter. I want to end all of this. I can't continue with this. I miss her. I want to hear her crying. Having her in my arms. I want to change her diapers, change her clothes. I want to hug her with all my strength. I want to see her. I miss her so much. I hate myself so much. It should be me and not her. It's my damn fault. I want all this pain. It's over. I want to end everything. Relevant comments stoked for breakfast. Not the asshole. I'm a doctor. This does happen. Not just to children but also to old adults who aren't able to adequately manage their own secretions, etc. See a therapist and a psychiatrist. Both are better than just one. And you'll get through it. You're not the asshole. At all. Sometimes bad things happen. It sucks. Mary Moose 923, not asshole. Please get grief counseling. This is not your fault. Even if you and your wife weren't dealing with a family emergency, and even if you weren't exhausted, your darling baby could have passed in exactly the same way during the night, or a nap. Even the doctor told you that it wasn't your fault. Like any other parent, you feel responsible for what happened. That's natural. So please get therapy. If not for yourself, think of your wife. How would she cope with losing both you and your daughter? Also, encourage your wife to get therapy. She's hurting as much as you are. New post, wife's post. Editor's note, below is the wife's post placed in the correct section of the timeline to assist with the context. Her post took place 4 days after OP's post. Plus added paragraph breaks for readability. It's not easy for me to talk about this, it happened very recently and I don't like talking about my problems with strangers either, but right now, I, female 24, feel alone and lost because I can't talk to anyone. This is the situation. As the title says, my baby died recently and my family is broken. This happened on New Year's while my husband, male 25, was taking care of her. My family, my father male 66, my aunt female 57 and my 2 cousins female 28 male 30, had come to visit my husband and I to meet our newborn daughter for Christmas. I told my father that we could go ourselves halfway through this year, 2024, since due to his delicate health I was worried about him making such a long trip, but he insisted because he wanted to meet his granddaughter. For a few days everything was fine. My dad loved my daughter very much, he kept saying that she was just like me when I was born. I was able to see my cousins and my aunt again. She was the closest thing I've ever had to a mother. Everything was fine until my dad started feeling bad a few days after Christmas dinner. In a moment he just collapsed due to severe chest pain. It didn't take us long to understand that it was because of his heart. So we took him to the emergency room where he stayed for at least 3 days. During all that time, my husband stayed at home with my daughter, because I did not want to leave my father, since his condition was serious at first. When he started to get better I went back to my house to see how my daughter was doing. I felt calm when I saw that my husband was taking good care of her on his own. However, I asked him if he needed me to stay with him. He told me to be calm, that he would take care of everything and that I focused on accompanying my dad. My husband knows how important my father is to me, so I was grateful to have a man like him supporting me. I returned calmly to the hospital, but a few hours later my husband called me crying. It took him a while to calm down enough to tell me that my baby was dying. He had drowned. I remember very little what happened after that call. At one point my husband had already arrived at the hospital with my daughter, but they were unable to save her. Before you think it was negligence, no, my husband did not neglect her. The doctor explained to us that the baby died of sudden infant death syndrome. She choked on her own vomit while she was sleeping. My husband could not have prevented it unless he had been watching her non-stop. 24 hours a day, so no, it wasn't his fault. My daughter's body was cremated as my culture dictates, and her ashes are now in my house, in her room. The most difficult thing was to tell my father. He woke up from his comatose state on January 1st, but I couldn't go see him until the next day. Prudently, my father had not been told anything about what happened. I tried to put good face until my father asked to see my daughter. I tried to excuse myself, but eventually he had to find out only a couple of days later. I wish he hadn't told me since it caused him to relapse, and this time, it has taken him a long time to recover. During the entire month of January my cousins returned home, but father stayed with me at my house along with my aunt to help me take care of him. My husband practically stopped doing anything. I focused all my energy on taking care of my father and maintaining the house in order. It was a longer and more difficult time for everyone. My father was finally able to return to his house on January 30th, and since then it's just my husband and I. He doesn't talk to me, he doesn't eat, he doesn't sleep well, he can't work, he works from home, he doesn't want to talk to anyone, not even me. My family has tried to talk to me, but I don't want to talk either. I just ask for updates on my father. I don't let them ask me about anything else. For my part, I'm back to work and I'm thinking about taking extra hours since I spent part of my savings on hospital bills. But I really want to get away from my house. I feel like I'm suffocating there. I can't get into my baby's room without crying. My husband, for his part, spends most of his day there. I don't know what to do. I cry to my baby every night. I cry into his clothes, his stuffed animals, his blankets, until I fall asleep. Now I'm eating twice as much. I devour the portions that my husband doesn't want, and I keep asking for more. The house is a disaster. I feel like we are both dying and we are doing nothing to prevent it. Relevant comments leader_inside. I think you need to read this. It sounds like your husband posted it a few days ago. It was deleted, but I found the post on Reddit. I'm so unbelievably sorry for your loss. I'm 34 weeks pregnant with a baby girl right now. I read the other post shortly after it was posted and haven't stopped thinking about your family. Please consider getting professional help for yourself and your husband if you can get him to agree. If you ever want to scream into a void who will just listen, please feel free to DM me. I'm praying for peace and healing for your family. And again, I'm so sorry for your loss. Edit to add, not the wife. My God, it's him. I have to talk with him big_fly_1561. I'm so sorry I can even be able to imagine the pain and heartbreak. Just take it 1 hour at a time, one day at a time. Anytime you can do something for yourself, do it, but the main thing is to focus on working through the grief. When you are ready to talk, I would suggest you and your husband do both individual counseling and marriage counseling. A loss like this is incredibly hard on both of you individually and as a couple. Try not to lose your husband or yourself. This wasn't anyone's fault, and I hope in time you and your husband can work through the grief and pain and find joy in life once more. My heart goes out to you. The fact that you're even here expressing this story shows how strong you are. Wife. Thank you very much. I don't want to lose my marriage. We haven't talked about divorce. Actually, we haven't talked at all. I know we need therapy. Thank you for your words. Update. Hello. Am I the A? I came here a few months ago to vent about the loss of my daughter. To be honest, I didn't see the post until a week later and I saw that my account was suspended. It's not important since it was just a discard account. So I opened another one just to let you know that I have read all your comments. Kim and I we are fine, however we are in the process of being fine. Kim is also an active Reddit user and saw my post. We talked a lot, we cried, and I have to say I'm glad she saw it. Since Angela is not with us, I have spent most of the time in her room and Kim returned to work very quickly since she no longer needed maternity leave. But our therapist gave us a lot of advice on how to deal with grief. I have been diagnosed with depression and I'm working on it with the help of Kim. She's also in therapy. We support each other in every way we can. My father-in-law is as well as can be. He recovered, but he hasn't been well since we told him about Angela. Kim calls him practically every day. She can't do much more since he lives in another country and it's already difficult enough for us. Right now we are looking to sell our house and move to a smaller place. We bought the house thinking about having a big family, but we are going to postpone that for the moment. No matter how broken I am inside, my wife is my priority right now, so I have to prioritize my marriage. I will not update again. I wanted to assure all the noble souls who supported us that we are still here and we appreciate your words and support. You're all wonderful people. God bless you. Relevant comments. Dehydrated rain. Absolutely heartbreaking, but it might be better for her. Staying home and unoccupied gives the mind a lot more time to focus on the empty room and intrusive thoughts. 8 hours of work distraction and a good therapist/psych might speed up healing. I'm not saying this to sound callous. I speak from personal experience. Family emergencies for 2 people, but not as bad as this story. Crazy 11. A part of me just broke seeing her comment, my God, it's him. 2 parents grieve the loss of their newborn baby. Neither can handle that grief and are rapidly slipping away, and they're both so hurt that they can't even talk to each other about it due to all the guilt and heartbreak. They both reach out to strangers online hoping for a place to vent, have unbiased people judge their actions, and just some place to put this all down. Without the members of these communities pointing out how similar her post was to her husband's, they might still be both grieving alone. He would still be shattered in that room contemplating suicide and feeling like it was all his fault, and she would be working herself to death. To all those involved, their child died and that's beyond a tragedy, but you might have just saved their lives. Catmo, I remember reading the original post by my husband when it was new. I had no idea there was an update. I'm so glad there was one. The original has been living rent-free in my head ever since I read it. This was definitely a tough read. I'm so glad this worked in their favor and helped them get the help they each so desperately need. As a parent, things happen all the time that are out of our control. Even if it's something completely out of our hands, I think it's a pretty natural response to blame ourselves in some way. We're supposed to be their protectors. It's hard to remind ourselves that it is literally impossible to protect them every second of every day, but it is oh so important. You can drive yourself mad with that kind of worry. He could have been sleeping right next to her bed and still not been able to do anything to save her. These kinds of things tend to be silent and happen quickly. I'm glad that Kim understood this and didn't blame him or resent him for it. It's easy for one parent to do to the other. It's hard to not have someone to blame in a truly blameless situation. I hope one day he will be able to truthfully tell himself that this was not his fault. It's going to take time, but with them supporting each other, they will get there eventually. Losing a child is not something you ever get over. They will never really recover from this, and that's okay, but hopefully they can learn how to manage their grief in a healthy way and remember their baby fondly. To any parents out there who have lost a child, I am deeply sorry for your loss. I hope all of you have found at least a little bit of peace along the way. From one parent to another, I'm sending love and hugs to you all. Am I the A for not letting my stepson 12 live with us? I don't want anyone to interfere in my life, and the child is unnecessary in my marriage. I have 2 boys, 10 male and 5 male, and I'm getting married in the next few weeks to my boyfriend who has a 12 son from a previous relationship. My future husband's son asked his dad if he could come live with us after we get married because he wants to experience a genuine family dynamic with parents and siblings, given that his biological parents never married anyone else. My husband is on board with this idea, believing it would contribute positively to the boy's personal growth. I expressed to my husband that I have reservations about having him live with us, based on observations during the weekends he spends at our place. Firstly, he appears to have a strained relationship with my younger son. He rarely includes him in activities unless I specifically prompt him to do so. When I ask him to assist the younger boy, such as accompanying him to the bathroom, he does so with obvious reluctance. Secondly, he displays an excessive competitive streak towards my older son. He consistently aims to outperform him, and even taunts him when he succeeds. I find this overly competitive atmosphere uncomfortable. I desire my children to grow up in a nurturing and supportive environment. The third and most significant concern is his academic and behavioral performance. My boyfriend has informed me that his son has been struggling academically and has faced minor behavioral challenges. I am concerned about his potential negative influence on my children, particularly my older son. My husband dismisses these concerns as typical for his age, believing that with our guidance, he could improve. I sought advice from my mother, and she disagrees with me, asserting that providing a united family environment could greatly benefit my stepson. Both of them label my reasons as unreasonable. Am I the A? Edit. Many people didn't quite catch the bathroom example I provided. Let's say we're at a park. I can't let my 5-year-old go to the bathroom alone. So I might have my stepson accompany him for safety reasons. It's the kind of thing an older child should do for a younger one. Update. I know that I am not the best person, but I never mistreated or ignored my future stepson. I care for him, and I would never think of hurting him. I realize now that I was being overly protective of my own children and not considering things from my future stepson's perspective. I was afraid that my future stepson might bully my kids. For example, excluding the younger one from activities he enjoys like building with Legos or teasing the older one when he wins, but now I can see that if he wants to live with us, it's because he cares about his future siblings. Moreover, as a responsible adult, I understand that I have an obligation to help him with behavior and school grades. I talked to my boyfriend, and I accept that he can come live with us. Now we'll need to move to a new house so that each child can have their own room, and we'll have to work on getting custody. Relevant comments. Info on stepson's mom. Unfortunately, my stepson is the result of a one-night relationship, not a marriage. My fiancé said he even tried to have a dating or more serious relationship with her, but she declined. She has always had custody of the boy, and she has never been married. It's just her and the boy. I work remotely, so even though I have work obligations, I'll be the one providing more assistance to the children. I don't see it as a problem, even with one more child. He lives with his mom, who has full custody. He seeks my fiancé to ask if he can live with us because he wants to have a family with siblings. I don't know his mom very well. I only met her a few times, like on his birthday. After the update, we're going to talk to him and his mom tonight. I'm going to tell him that our house is his home, and he's more than welcome here. We're going to say that we are even planning to move to a new house to give him his own room. But it also depends on the conversation with his mom. My fiancé thinks we won't have any issues. OP is voted you're the A. This sums up the majority opinion well. You're the A. You're marrying his father, so you should start considering him as your son as well. If your eldest son, 10 male, started displaying all these behaviors, then surely you wouldn't just kick him out and give up on him. I would get your BF on board with ways to deal with the behaviors that you're not happy with. Update post. I initially want to thank the comments that helped me understand that I was in the wrong. I learned that I was being extremely selfish, only looking out for my own children and my fear that they might somehow face bullying at home, but I wasn't considering the feelings of my stepson. I've also learned that the dynamics between siblings, something I never experienced, inevitably involve a bit of competition and rivalry. I was so focused on myself and my kids that I couldn't see that if he wants to live with us, then obviously he cares about us, especially the idea of having siblings. So I hope we will work together to build a great dynamic in our house. I talked to my fiancé, even showed him this Reddit post, and told him that I agree our stepson should live with us, that I was wrong about my reservations concerning the boy. He talked to the mother of my stepson, who has legal custody of him. I didn't participate in the conversation, as I understand it's a moment for the biological parents. Despite being reluctant, after hearing from her own child that he wanted to live with us, she agreed to work out an arrangement where he will spend a significant amount of time with us. My fiancé and the boy's mother will still have to discuss the details. After that, my fiancé and I took my stepson out to eat his favorite burger and talked. I told him that we're happy to have him as a new member of our household, that we're going to look for a new house to better accommodate the family now that we'll be 5, and he can have his own room. He was very happy. We didn't address some concerns that I still have, like the issue of discipline and following rules. I avoided that topic so it doesn't seem like I'm threatening him to go back to living with his mom. I want him to feel accepted unconditionally in our home. But of course, we'll have that conversation about discipline with the older two soon to prevent any issues, and also emphasize the importance of maintaining good grades in school. P.S. There's no need for anyone here to send me messages cursing me out. I've received dozens of offensive messages, and it doesn't help anyone. I've also received supportive messages with advice, and I appreciate those messages. The internet and this community don't need to be a place for hate. Relevant comments. You need to discuss discipline as soon as possible to be on the same page. I'm aware of that. This issue has always been one of the key points for me. I always believe that when a child is disciplined by a step-parent, they might perceive it as unfair, which can significantly impact the relationship between the child and the step-parent. However, we've discussed making a list of rules and the corresponding consequences for breaking each rule, so I hope that no one feels unjustly treated. If something comes up that isn't on the list, then the decision will need to be a joint one between me and my fiancé. OP's stance. I've always told my fiancé that if my stepson came to live with us, then it would be for the rest of our lives, as my stepson isn't an object that we can return for some reason. I've always had that very clear. He was always a member of the household, you're the new one. Honestly, I think the issue here is just the choice of words. When I said member of our household, my fiancé and my stepson understood that I was referring to him becoming a new resident of the house, as he didn't live here before. Regardless of whether you agree or not, the fact is that he lived at his mother's house, and in practice was a visitor at ours. Of course, I did everything to make him feel that our house was also his, but there's a difference between living here and spending weekends. I never meant to say that he wasn't a part of the family. I've always treated him as a family member. This is a part I haven't quite grasped yet. Many people talk as if I treat my stepson poorly. When my husband read the comments on the other post, he told me not to worry, because I treat his son very well, and I think it's obvious that if I mistreated him, he wouldn't want to live with me. So, where does this idea come from that I treat him poorly? I know that when I said that I didn't want him living with us sounds rude. But there is a huge difference between how you treat a kid and what you discuss with your fiancé. Further info on the housing situation. It's still his own house. I completely agree with this, which is why I mentioned that I did everything to make him feel like the house was his too. But there's an aspect I didn't mention, and perhaps it's another reason for my choice of words. My fiancé is moving into the house I live in with my kids, so chronologically, it makes sense for me to refer to it as my house, and say that my stepson is a new member of it. Of course, from his perspective, we are the new members of his family. Child's perspective is very different and very insightful. Yes, that's true. The best I can do is treat my stepson the same way I treat my own children. And I don't believe there have been any instances where I treated him differently. In fact, I realized I was expecting behaviors from him similar to those of my older son, without considering his different experiences, which made me unfair to him. Does stepson have his own room? Are you spending enough time with him? This is a very important point. I completely agree that it's crucial for children of divorced parents to understand that they have two homes, and to have their personal belongings in both. The thing is, we've been gradually adapting over time. First I got to know my stepson, then he got to know my kids, and then they started spending more time together, until it got to the point where he practically spends every weekend here, even though legally, my fiancé only has custody every other weekend. He always had his things at his dad's house. But my house is bigger and my fiancé is moving in here. Unfortunately, my house only has 3 bedrooms, mine and one for each child. So he was left without his own space. When he comes over, he has to sleep in my older son's room. So in reality, he's been kind of like a visitor, you know? That's the reason I'm looking for another house. I want to give him his own space, just like my kids have theirs. Yes. I understand that my stepson isn't in the best situation right now. We were already looking to move to a new house after getting married, regardless of whether he would come to live with us or not, precisely because of this issue. But we were both planning to sell our houses to buy the new one, so it would still take several months. Now, we'll be renting a house in the next few weeks. Since we were already exploring the real estate market, we already know of a house that we like. Clarifying the bathroom example above. I never used him for free childcare. I was unfortunate in the example I gave about the bathroom, but I'll explain again what happens. We have a young child who's 5 years old. I can't expect a 5-year-old to behave in a mature appropriate manner at all times, but I can expect the older ones, aged 10 and 12, to understand that the 5-year-old is a little child who doesn't yet grasp various situations. So, for instance, if the older two are playing video games for an hour without letting the little one join in, it's obvious they need to stop and let the little one play a bit too. Otherwise, the little one will feel sad and angry, think that his siblings don't like him, and so on. I'm not asking them to play with the little one all the time, but to look at the situation from the little one's perspective so as not to hurt him. In the bathroom situation I mentioned last time, it was just me, my stepson, and my youngest son. When my youngest son is with any of the boys, he refuses to go to the bathroom with me. That day, he was practically on the verge of tears, not wanting to go with me and wanting to go with his brother. So in my view, my stepson, upon seeing the boy almost in tears over a trivial situation, should have understood he should help to prevent him from actually crying. But he only helped after I insisted a lot. Anyway, I believe my stepson will grasp this dynamic soon, just like my older son already does. You need to adjust your expectations. You need to adjust your expectations. You are correct.